Welcome, my night wanderers. Tonight, we step into the silent trails, moonlit lawns, and shadowed groves of Washington's most haunted parks, places where nature thrives, yet unseen eyes seem to watch, and shadows move when no one is there. Some parks welcome families and joggers by day, but when darkness falls, strange whispers echo through the trees, and figures appear where none should stand. Stories of lost hikers, mysterious apparitions, and restless spirits linger here, terrifying locals and visitors alike. So take a deep breath, stay close to the path, and join me as we explore the 25 most haunted parks in Washington where shadows move at night. Seattle's Discovery Park, sprawling over 500 acres and perched on the edge of Puget Sound, is known for its stunning vistas, dense forests, and quiet beaches. But beneath its natural beauty lies a history steeped in tragedy and eerie occurrences. Hikers, joggers, and casual visitors often come seeking a peaceful escape from the city, yet many leave with stories that hint at something far more unsettling than the sounds of wind through the trees or the distant crash of waves. The park occupies land that was once inhabited by the Duwamish people, long before the city of Seattle existed. Some locals claim that the spirits of those displaced linger, restless and unsettled. Others point to the park's more recent history. Discovery Park was once part of Fort Lawton, a military installation active from the early 1900s through the mid-20th century. Soldiers trained, lived, and occasionally died on this land, leaving echoes of their presence that some say can still be felt. Many visitors report hearing footsteps on trails where no one else is present. A common story involves a woman walking her dog along the loop trail in the late afternoon. She noticed the crunch of boots behind her. Though the path was otherwise empty, she quickened her pace, but the sounds kept pace, stopping whenever she stopped, only to resume once she began walking again. When she finally turned to confront whoever or whatever was behind her, there was nothing. Similar accounts often describe the same chilling pattern, unseen footsteps that mimic your own, never fully catching up, yet impossible to ignore. Other reports focus on ghostly figures near the park's cliffs, where the trees thin and the sound of the water below becomes dominant. One hiker described seeing a man in early 20th century military garb standing at the edge of the bluff. His posture was rigid, his gaze fixed on the water below. When the hiker called out, the figure simply vanished, leaving only the roar of the waves and the echo of a distant footstep. Some theorists suggest that these apparitions may be linked to the soldiers who trained at Fort Lawton, many of whom perished in training accidents or from illness. The forests themselves seem to harbor strange activity. Shadows dart between trees in ways that defy natural movement. Hikers often report glimpsing something flitting, figures slipping between trunks, gone before they can focus. At night, these shadows appear to grow bolder. Joggers and nightwalkers have claimed that dark forms seem to follow them through the trails, always at the edge of vision. Some describe a sense of being watched, a pressure on their shoulders that vanishes when they stop to look, leaving only the rustling leaves and their own heartbeats. Even the park's beaches have stories of unexplained occurrences. During calm evenings, when the tide retreats and the sand is exposed, some visitors report seeing figures walking along the shoreline, often appearing as silhouettes or faint reflections on the wet sand. One couple photographing the sunset captured an image of what looked like a small group of people standing in the distance, completely still. When they approached, the figures had disappeared without a trace, and there were no footprints in the sand. In addition to sightings and sounds, there are reports of inexplicable sensations. Visitors have described sudden chills, as if a cold wind swept through only a small section of trail, or the feeling of someone brushing past them in the dense underbrush. One hiker recounted an intense moment while navigating the West Bluff trails. She felt a presence so strong she could almost sense breathing on the back of her neck, but when she spun around, the path behind her was empty. This sensation, she said, was not just fear, but something heavier. A weight that pressed against her chest before lifting as suddenly as it appeared. Discovery Park also seems to retain echoes of emotional trauma. Some ghost hunters and paranormal investigators suggest that certain areas act as energy hotspots, amplifying memories of pain, loss, and sudden death. The cliffs, in particular, are believed to hold residual impressions of those who may have fallen or leaped from the heights. Witnesses describe a sense of sorrow or desperation that seems almost tangible, a quiet mourning that exists in tandem with the wind and waves. Local lore is peppered with specific stories passed down from visitors and park employees alike. One longtime ranger tells of a night patrol in the back trails when he saw a small, hooded figure standing beneath a tree. Its head was bowed, hands clasped, as if in mourning. When he approached, the figure dissolved into the mist, leaving only a faint echo of a sob. Others recount glimpses of children playing near the beaches or the forest edges, disappearing the moment they are acknowledged. These experiences suggest that Discovery Park is not only a place where human history intersects with natural beauty, but also a site where memories of the past seem to linger in physical form. Even casual daytime visitors can feel the park's eerie side. Some report their compasses spinning wildly in the denser forest areas, or GPS devices malfunctioning without explanation. Dogs are also said to react unusually, barking at invisible entities or refusing to walk certain trails. Photographs occasionally show unexplained orbs of light, shadowy figures, or strange distortions in areas where nothing is physically present. While skeptics attribute these phenomena to natural elements, low light, or optical illusions, those who experience them firsthand often insist there is something more. The juxtaposition of Seattle's urban environment and the wild, seemingly untouched landscape of Discovery Park may enhance these sensations. Walking through the park, one is cut off from the familiar city sounds, surrounded by towering trees and the endless sky. This isolation amplifies both the imagination and the unexplained, creating an environment where ordinary sounds take on a more sinister quality. And ordinary sights can shift into the uncanny. Despite, or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, Discovery Park remains a beloved destination. Visitors continue to explore its trails, cliffs, and beaches, drawn not only by the natural beauty, but also by the thrill of encountering the unknown. Each account of footsteps behind an empty trail, a shadow between the trees, or a figure at the cliff edge contributes to the park's complex identity. Where history, nature, and the supernatural intersect, those who walk its paths are reminded that beneath the serenity of towering evergreens and crashing waves, Discovery Park holds secrets that refuse to remain silent. Whether the phenomena are echoes of the past, manifestations of lingering sorrow, or something else entirely, the stories persist. For many, the park's haunted side is not a deterrent, but an invitation to experience the ordinary world touched by something extraordinary, where every shadow and whisper may hold the presence of those who came before. In Discovery Park, beauty and mystery coexist, and the land continues to bear witness to the stories, tragedies, and spirits that make it one of Seattle's most enigmatic places. Lincoln Park in Seattle stretches along the shoreline of West Seattle, offering panoramic views of Puget Sound, forested trails, and quiet beaches. By day, it is a haven for families, dog walkers, and nature enthusiasts. Yet beneath its tranquil appearance lies a history tinged with tragedy and stories of lingering spirits. The park's most infamous location is the old bathhouse, now abandoned but once a bustling center for swimmers in the mid-20th century. Locals tell of whispers that echo through the empty corridors, voices that seem to speak just out of earshot. Visitors have described walking near the structure and hearing faint murmurs, sometimes calling their names, only to find no one nearby. The whispers are often accompanied by an inexplicable chill, as if the air itself carries a memory of sorrow. Some claim that if you pause long enough, the sound of footsteps on the old wooden floors can be heard, pacing back and forth as though someone is trapped in eternal routine. The beach area near the bathhouse is equally notorious. For decades, stories have circulated about a young woman who drowned there in the mid-20th century. Witnesses say her spirit continues to roam the sands, particularly at night. Her presence marked by an eerie feeling of being watched. People walking along the shore after sunset have reported seeing a solitary figure standing near the water's edge, silhouetted against the faint glow of the city lights across the sound. When approached, the figure vanishes, leaving only the sound of gentle waves and an unsettling emptiness. Some say she appears sorrowful, her head bowed as if mourning her untimely death, while others describe a more ethereal quality, almost like a faint shimmer in the darkness. The forested trails that wind through Lincoln Park also hold their share of strange occurrences. Hikers have reported glimpses of figures peering from the shadows of dense evergreens, watching silently before melting into the underbrush. The sightings are fleeting, often just a flash of movement at the corner of one's eye, yet enough to instill a lasting unease. Some describe feeling sudden chills when passing these areas, as though an unseen presence has brushed past, or a sense of being followed, with no one visible behind them. This sensation is sometimes accompanied by whispers carried on the wind, unintelligible, yet persistent, hinting at messages from another time. Photographers and paranormal enthusiasts have captured other unexplained phenomena throughout the park. Some report seeing faint figures in images taken near the bathhouse or the cliffside trails, shadows that appear solid yet lack any discernible source. Others have photographed orbs of light hovering over the beach, reflections of the city's glow distorted in ways that seem unnatural. While skeptics attribute such anomalies to long exposures or lens artifacts, those who experience them firsthand insist there is something more than simple coincidence. The history of Lincoln Park adds weight to its haunted reputation. The park was developed on land previously used for logging and milling, industries that brought both prosperity and danger to the area. Accidents, drownings, and other misfortunes left their mark, and it is said that the land retains echoes of these past tragedies. The story of the young woman who drowned is perhaps the most persistent, but she is far from the only spirit alleged to inhabit the park. Visitors report hearing cries, laughter, and even footsteps along the beach and forest paths, particularly in areas removed from the well-trodden trails. Some witnesses describe the ghostly figure of the young woman as interacting subtly with the environment. For example, one jogger recounted pausing near the beach after noticing a faint mist forming along the shoreline. In the mist, she saw a young woman appear, standing silently, watching the water. The jogger tried to speak, but no sound passed her lips. Moments later, the figure vanished, and the mist dissipated, as if it had never been there. Others have reported finding small, unexplainable disturbances. Sand shifted as though footprints had appeared and then vanished, or leaves arranged in a pattern that seemed deliberate, suggesting a presence attempting to communicate. The abandoned bathhouse continues to attract both curiosity and fear. At night, the structure seems to pulse with a quiet energy, drawing visitors who are brave enough to explore the darkened interior. Some have reported the feeling of being observed, while others have heard distant laughter or the shuffle of feet on stairs long disused. The whispers are often described as a pleading or melancholic tone, and those who linger too long sometimes report a growing sense of sorrow that cannot be easily shaken. Even in daylight, Lincoln Park can feel strangely alive with remnants of its past. Dogs barking at invisible figures, sudden gusts of wind that chill the skin, and inexplicable flashes of movement in the peripheral vision are common experiences. Many locals believe that the park's combination of shoreline, forest, and abandoned structures makes it particularly suited for paranormal activity. The open spaces of the beach, contrasted with the dense forest trails, create pockets where energy seems to linger, waiting to be sensed by those sensitive to it. Despite its eerie reputation, Lincoln Park remains a popular destination, attracting hikers, families, and those intrigued by its haunted history. The stories of whispers, ghostly figures, and a tragic young woman who roams the beach contribute to the park's unique identity, where natural beauty and spectral mystery coexist. Visitors are reminded to tread carefully, especially at night, and to respect both the land and the spirits said to inhabit it. Each encounter, whether it is a fleeting shadow in the trees or a whisper near the bathhouse, reinforces the idea that Lincoln Park is more than a city park, is a place where the past and present intersect, and where some memories refuse to fade. For those willing to explore, The park offers both serenity and suspense, a chance to experience the natural beauty of Seattle, while being reminded that tragedy and memory linger just beneath the surface. Lincoln Park's trails, cliffs, and beaches tell a story not only of the city and its development, but also of the lives, deaths, and spirits that continue to watch over it. Whether a skeptic or a believer, a walk through Lincoln Park is never just a walk, it is a journey through history, emotion, and the lingering presence of those who cannot let go. Green Lake Park in Seattle is a popular urban retreat known for its serene waters, tree-lined paths, and vibrant community of joggers, cyclists, and families. By day, the park is alive with activity. Children play along the shore, paddleboarders skim across the water, and friends gather on benches beneath leafy canopies. But as the sun dips below the horizon and shadows stretched across the lake, Green Lake reveals a far more unsettling side. Visitors and locals alike have reported experiences that suggest the park harbors lingering spirits, remnants of tragedies long past. The most commonly reported phenomena occur around the lake itself. On quiet nights, shadows are said to glide across the water's surface, moving in ways that defy natural currents or reflections. Witnesses describe these shapes as vaguely humanoid, sometimes appearing to float just above the water before dissolving into mist. Joggers and late-night walkers have also recounted feeling an unnerving presence along the paths, the sound of footsteps following them even when the trails are completely empty. Many describe turning around, only to find no one there. Yet the sensation of being pursued lingers, accompanied by a sudden chill in the air. Historically, Green Lake has been the site of numerous accidents, drownings, and unfortunate events dating back decades. Some believe these tragedies have left a permanent mark on the area, with restless spirits returning to the place where their lives ended. One widely told story involves a young man who drowned in the 1940s while swimming during a late summer evening. Joggers and night walkers near the same section of the lake sometimes report seeing a faint figure wading in the water, as though searching for something lost. The figure is usually distant and fleeting, vanishing the moment an observer focuses too closely, leaving only the sound of gentle ripples and an unsettling sense of loss. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of Green Lake's haunting. Late-night joggers along the northern and western paths have consistently reported the sound of pacing or running that mirrors their own steps. In some cases, the footsteps quicken when the jogger quickens, slow when they slow, and stop abruptly whenever they stop. The phenomenon is particularly disconcerting because it appears to obey no physical laws. The sounds seem to emanate from nowhere, yet they follow the observer precisely. Several runners claim that the footsteps have even overtaken them, only to vanish as suddenly as they appeared, leaving a deafening silence and an adrenaline-fueled sense of vulnerability. The forested areas around Green Lake, where paths wind beneath thick canopies of evergreens and maples, have their own reputation for unusual activity. Shadows are reported darting between trees, sometimes glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, only to disappear when looked at directly. Witnesses often describe an oppressive sense of being watched, a weight on the shoulders or neck, accompanied by a soft, unintelligible whisper on the wind. Some report hearing laughter or cries carried faintly from unseen sources, blending with the rustling leaves and the distant hum of the city, creating a disorienting mix of urban and otherworldly sounds. Even during daylight, certain areas of the park seem to exude an eerie energy. Visitors have photographed unexpected anomalies, distorted reflections on the lake, orbs of light hovering above the surface, and shadowy figures that cannot be accounted for by trees or passerby. Dogs frequently react to unseen presences, barking or growling at empty spaces along the paths. The combination of water, forest, and open space appears to create an environment where energy lingers, particularly in spots associated with past tragedies. The lake's western edge, near the old bathhouse and boat launch, is considered especially active. Many believe that the spirits congregate here, drawn to the sites of accidents or places that once held significance for their lives. One couple walking along the shore in a late evening described feeling a sudden icy gust pass between them. In the shifting shadows, They thought they saw a small group of figures standing near the water, motionless. As they drew closer, the figures faded, leaving no footprints, no disturbance of the sand, and only the soft sound of water lapping against the shore. Green Lake's hauntings also seem tied to emotional energy. The spirits are often described as appearing sorrowful rather than malevolent. Joggers and nighttime visitors report an overwhelming sense of melancholy or longing. When in areas where apparitions have been seen, the lake, wide and reflective, acts almost like a mirror, amplifying these emotions. Some theorists suggest that the combination of human tragedy and natural beauty allows residual energy to linger, creating moments where the past intrudes upon the present. Park rangers and staff have occasionally reported strange experiences as well. Cleaning crews and security personnel working early or late have mentioned hearing footsteps echoing on deserted paths, whispers near the lake, and even faint outlines of figures that vanish when approached. While these reports are less publicized, they reinforce the park's reputation as a place where the boundary between the living and the dead seems permeable. Despite these reports, Green Lake remains a beloved destination for Seattle residents. Many are drawn to its scenic beauty and recreational opportunities, aware that legends and ghost stories have become part of the park's identity. Some embrace the eerie aspects, taking nighttime walks or jogs in the hope of glimpsing the unexplained, while others prefer to stick to daytime visits. Regardless, the tales of shadows on the water, phantom footsteps, and lingering spirits add a layer of mystery that coexists with the park's vibrant, everyday life. For those who experience it firsthand, Green Lake is more than just an urban park. It is a place where history, tragedy, and the natural world intersect, where the laughter of children by day gives way to whispers and footsteps by night. Whether the phenomena are the result of lingering spirits, heightened senses in low-light conditions, or a combination of both, the stories persist. Each shadow on the water, each sound on the empty path, reinforces the notion that Green Lake holds memories that refuse to fade, reminding visitors that even in a modern city, the past can linger quietly, waiting to be sensed by those who pass through. Volunteer Park in Seattle appears, at first glance, to be nothing more than a serene urban retreat. Its manicured gardens, winding paths, and elegant reservoir seem designed for quiet reflection rather than fear. Yet, as night falls and the last sunlight slips behind the trees, a different energy begins to stir. Locals whisper that the park changes after dark. It becomes quieter, not peaceful, but watchful. Something unseen lingers beneath the stillness, something that has been there long before the city grew around it. The most frequent stories begin near the old water tower, rising above the tree line. The tower is a familiar landmark by day, a relic of early 20th century engineering, but at night, it becomes the focus of countless strange encounters. Visitors have reported a shadowy man pacing near its base, his outline faint, his movements slow, deliberate. He's said to appear just beyond the reach of lamplight, standing as if waiting for someone. When approached, the figure vanishes. Those who have come too close describe an icy wave of dread, as if walking through something unseen yet alive, a chill that lingers long after they've left the park. One local runner, accustomed to evening jogs around the reservoir, once described seeing the figure standing at the base of the tower late one night. He thought it was another visitor, until the man simply dissolved. No sound, no movement, just gone. Moments later, the runner heard faint footsteps behind him. They matched his pace exactly. When he stopped, they stopped. When he started again, they followed, but no one was there. It isn't just a tower that carries an unsettling reputation. The conservatory, a Victorian glass structure filled with exotic plants, has its own tales. After sunset, its windows often reflect things that aren't there. Some visitors report seeing a face in the glass, someone watching from the inside, even when the building is locked and empty. A night security guard once claimed to see the shape of a woman in old-fashioned clothing walking among the plants. She disappeared the moment he unlocked the door, but her faint reflection lingered for several seconds longer in the glass, smiling faintly before fading into nothing. Even the pathways that weave through the park hold their secrets. There's a certain bend near the reservoir where people hear whispers soft, indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. They seem to come from nowhere in particular, echoing from every direction. Some describe them as conversational, others as pleading. The sounds vanish when one turns to listen directly, but the air remains heavy, like a presence that refuses to leave. Dogs often react first, growling or whining at empty spaces, pulling their owners toward the exits. Historians suggest that volunteer parks' strange atmosphere may stem from its history. Long before it became a city park, the land served as a cemetery. In the 1870s, Seattle's first municipal burial ground was established on this site. When the city decided to repurpose the land for public use, most of the graves were relocated to Lakeview Cemetery nearby. But most is not all. Over the years, workers unearthed scattered human remains, coffins forgotten, bones disturbed by construction. The belief that some souls were left behind has persisted ever since. Those who worked at the park after hours tell stories of strange occurrences that seem tied to that uneasy history. Groundskeepers have reported tools moving on their own, gates swinging open without wind, and the faint sound of digging coming from the soil near the older sections of the park. One man swore he saw a flickering lantern light among the trees, bobbing gently as if carried by an unseen hand. When he followed it, the light vanished, yet he found a small, freshly disturbed patch of earth where it had appeared. The nearby Asian Art Museum, located within the park, is also said to harbor its own disturbances. Security cameras have recorded shadowy movements inside locked galleries. Staff working late sometimes hear footsteps on the marble floors or the faint creak of doors opening on their own. The most unnerving reports describe reflections in the museum's glass cases, figures standing behind the observer, even when no one else is present. Visitors walking alone often describe the sensation of being watched. Some compare it to standing on a stage in total darkness, aware of unseen eyes studying every move. Others feel something brush past them, like the whisper of fabric, followed by a sharp temperature drop. It's as if the park breathes differently at night, alive, attentive, waiting. The reservoir itself adds to the unease. On calm evenings, its surface acts like a dark mirror, reflecting the trees and lamplights with eerie precision. Yet some claim that if you stare too long, you might see more than your reflection. A few have seen figures standing behind them in the water as surface figures that vanish when they turn around. One woman recounted seeing her own reflection, blinked several seconds out of sync, as if something else was mimicking her movements. Skeptics dismiss these tales as tricks of light, imagination stirred by the park's quiet isolation. But even skeptics admit that Volunteer Park feels different after dark. Every footstep seems too loud, every shadow too deep. The air feels charged, like the moment before a storm, when something unseen is waiting to break through. Psychic investigators who have visited the park describe the area around the water tower as particularly active. EMF readings spike near the foundation, and cold spots appear even in warm weather. Some mediums claim to sense confusion and unrest, as though the spirits bound there are searching for something or someone. They describe one dominant presence, possibly male, lingering near the tower, eternally pacing the same stretch of ground. When asked what they feel, one investigator said simply, "He's waiting to be remembered." There's also the matter of the echo. Late at night, if you call out near the tower, the sound sometimes returns distorted, lower, drawn out, like a voice imitating yours. Some believe it's just an acoustic quirk of the structure. Others insist it's an attempt at communication, the park's way of answering back. To this day, people continue to experience strange happenings in Volunteer Park. Tourists stumble upon cold drafts in windless corners. Couples walking hand in hand find one of them suddenly overcome with inexplicable dread. Photographers reviewing nighttime shots discover faint silhouettes where none existed in person. The city of Seattle maintains the park beautifully. Its flowers, fountains, and pathways all radiate tranquility in the daylight. But those who know its stories understand that Volunteer Park has two faces, one that welcomes and one that watches. Gasworks Park in Seattle is a unique urban space, combining open green lawns with the skeletal remains of a gasification plant that once operated on the site. By day, it is filled with families, joggers, kite flyers, and photographers drawn to its unusual industrial structures and sweeping views of Lake Union. Yet when night falls, the park takes on a far more mysterious character. Visitors report sightings of shadowy figures climbing the rusting structures, unexplained lights flickering along the remnants of machinery, and sudden cold spots that appear without warning. Many believe these phenomena are the lingering presence of workers who died in accidents when the gas plant was operational. The rusted towers and pipes that dominate the park's landscape are the focus of much paranormal activity. These structures, remnants of a bygone era of industry, seem to come alive after dark. Witnesses describe shadowy figures moving along beams, climbing ladders, or pacing across platforms, appearing almost human yet impossibly still in certain moments. When approached, these figures often vanish, leaving only a sense of being observed and an oppressive quiet that seems to hang over the structures. Strange lights are another hallmark of Gasworks Park's haunting. Visitors report seeing glowing orbs hovering near the tops of towers, moving erratically along the old machinery, or appearing along the walkways where the plant once bustled with activity. These lights often flicker or change color, and many have attempted to capture them with cameras, only to find they behave in ways that defy simple explanation. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that these lights could be manifestations of residual energy, tied to the intense labor and tragic accidents that occurred during the plant's years of operation. Cold spots are a frequent and unsettling experience for those who explore the park after dark. In the middle of summer, visitors have described sudden drops in temperature as they approach certain areas of the rusting plant, sometimes accompanied by a prickling sensation along the skin or the feeling of a breath passing close by. These pockets of cold seem to move unpredictably, intensifying near the structures and fading as one moves away. Many interpret these phenomena as evidence of a presence lingering in areas where tragic events once took place. Auditory experiences have also been reported at Gasworks Park. On quiet nights, some visitors claim to hear the clanging of metal, the echo of footsteps along the beams, or muffled voices that seem to call out from the structures themselves. These sounds are often fleeting, vanishing when approached, leaving only the ambient noise of the wind and the distant city. The combination of visual, tactile, and auditory phenomena creates an immersive and unsettling experience, leaving witnesses with a sense of being watched or followed. The park's history explains much of its spectral reputation. The gasification plant was once a dangerous workplace, handling volatile chemicals and heavy machinery. Accidents were not uncommon, and several workers lost their lives on site. Some believe that these deaths left an imprint on the land, a lingering energy that manifests in the strange lights, shadowy figures, and cold spots reported today. The intensity of labor, coupled with sudden and violent accidents, may have created a residual imprint that continues to interact with those who visit the park after dark. Even in daylight, Gasworks Park exhibits qualities that can be unsettling. Shadows appear to shift in ways that do not match the sun's movement, and fleeting glimpses of shapes among the towers sometimes prompt visitors to stop and look, only to find nothing there. Dogs brought to the park often react to unseen presences, barking or hesitating near certain structures, suggesting that the phenomena are not merely imagined. The combination of industrial decay, open space, and historical tragedy creates an environment where both imagination and unexplained occurrences converge. Despite its haunted reputation, Gasworks Park remains one of Seattle's most beloved public spaces. Families, joggers, and kite flyers continue to enjoy its lawns and views, while paranormal enthusiasts are drawn to its eerie, nighttime atmosphere. The juxtaposition of scenic beauty, industrial relics, and lingering spirits makes the park a unique place where history, tragedy, and the unexplained coexist. Whether the ghostly figures, strange lights, and sudden cold are the remnants of workers who died decades ago or manifestations of perception heightened by the park's unusual structures. The reports persist. Those who explore Gasworks Park after dark leave with memories of an environment that feels alive in unexpected ways, where shadows move along rusted beams, lights flicker in the night, and the past seems to reach out, refusing to be forgotten. Magnuson Park in Seattle is a sprawling urban park that occupies more than 350 acres along the shores of Lake Washington. By day, it is a vibrant space filled with sports fields, walking trails, and picnic areas, drawing families, joggers, and kite enthusiasts alike. Yet beneath its current recreational charm lies a history rooted in military activity. The park was once the site of the Naval Air Station Seattle, an airfield active during the early to mid-20th century. The echoes of this past are said to linger in the form of ghostly apparitions, unexplained sounds, and fleeting shadows that appear when the park is quiet, particularly after dusk. Visitors and local residents alike report hearing distant footsteps across the abandoned hangars and tarmacs, even when the grounds are completely empty. One late evening, a jogger recounted moving along a trail near the old hangar complex when the unmistakable sound of heavy boots echoed behind him. He turned quickly, expecting to see another runner or perhaps a maintenance worker, but the trail was empty. The footsteps seemed to follow him for several minutes, keeping pace as he increased his speed, before fading into silence as abruptly as they had begun. Accounts like these are common, often leaving witnesses with an unnerving sense of being pursued by a presence that is unseen yet undeniably real. The abandoned hangars themselves are central to Magnuson Park's haunted reputation. These massive, empty structures, once filled with aircraft and the activity of military personnel, now stand silent, their corrugated walls and open doors casting long shadows across the tarmac. Visitors report seeing dark shapes moving across the interior of these hangars, figures that vanish when approached or illuminated by a flashlight. Some describe glimpses of men in period military uniforms, walking the length of the hangar as if on patrol, while others see indistinct shadows darting between support beams and equipment. These sightings often coincide with the sensation of sudden chills, a drop in temperature, or the feeling of eyes watching from the darkness. Magnuson Park also seems to harbor auditory phenomena beyond footsteps. Late at night, some have claimed to hear the hum of engines starting long since decommissioned, the creak of hangar doors swinging open, and the murmur of voices discussing tasks from decades past. These sounds often come from specific areas where hangars and old maintenance buildings are clustered, creating an eerie overlay of past and present. Witnesses frequently report that the sounds are most pronounced in areas far removed from the city lights, where ambient noise is minimal, allowing the smallest anomaly to stand out with startling clarity. The park's open fields and wooded sections contribute to the sense of unease. Shadows are frequently observed along tree lines, sometimes appearing to move independently of natural light or wind. Joggers and evening walkers report catching fleeting glimpses of figures standing just beyond the path, vanishing when looked at directly. Some visitors describe the feeling of being followed or sensed by something unseen, accompanied by a sudden weight on the chest or a tingling sensation along the spine. Even dogs brought to the park are known to react nervously in these areas, barking or refusing to move forward, as if sensing a presence imperceptible to the human eye. Historical context deepens the park's spectral lore. During its time as a military airfield, Magnuson Park was a site of intense activity, training, and occasional accidents. Aircraft crashes, equipment mishaps, and even isolated fatalities occurred on the grounds. Paranormal investigators and local storytellers suggest that the spirits of those who died in such accidents may remain tied to the location, replaying fragments of their final moments. Some believe that residual energy manifests in auditory and visual anomalies, while others propose that the heightened emotions and sudden deaths of the past create lingering impressions detectable to those attuned to subtle changes in the environment. Several visitors have documented unusual occurrences with photographs or video, Images taken near the hangars sometimes reveal faint silhouettes that cannot be accounted for by natural shadows or light sources. Orbs of light, streaks of color, or dark, humanoid shapes appear in places where no one is present. While skeptics attribute these phenomena to lens artifacts, reflections, or coincidental shadows, many witnesses insist that what they experience in person is far more compelling, an unmistakable sense of presence, movement, and history interwoven into the park itself. The combination of open airfields, abandoned structures, and wooded sections creates a unique environment for supernatural activity. Nighttime visitors often report that the feeling of isolation is intensified by the park's expanse, amplifying every sound and movement. Even during the day, some claim that certain spots feel charged with an unseen energy, a lingering impression of lives that once moved through the same paths, hovered over the same hangars, and walked the same tarmac. In addition to visual and auditory experiences, some report tactile sensations, a sudden gust of cold air passing through an otherwise warm evening, the sense of being brushed by an invisible presence, or an inexplicable pressure in a specific area are commonly cited. These phenomena tend to occur in areas historically associated with accidents or intense activity, reinforcing the link between the park's past and the experiences of the living. Despite the eerie reputation, Magnuson Park continues to attract visitors for its natural beauty, recreational facilities, and stunning views of Lake Washington and the Seattle skyline. Many locals embrace the stories as part of the park's identity, finding intrigue in the possibility that history has left its mark in more than just concrete and asphalt. For those curious enough to explore after dark, the combination of open spaces, old hangars, and wooded trails provides both the thrill of adventure and the unsettling possibility of encountering the unexplained. The ghostly apparitions, phantom footsteps, and strange sounds make Magnuson Park a place where past and present coexist. Whether these occurrences are residual energy, psychological effects of the environment, or genuine spectral activity, the stories endure. Visitors leave with memories that blend the beauty of the park with the lingering sense of something watching, following, or moving just beyond the edge of vision. Magnuson Park is not only a space for recreation but a living testament to the lives, accidents, and lingering presence of those who once walked, worked, and trained. They're a place where history and mystery intertwine in the quiet hours after sunset. Seward Park in Seattle is a sprawling urban forest that juts into Lake Washington, offering more than 300 acres of dense woods, winding trails, and quiet shoreline. By day, it is a popular destination for hikers, families, and nature enthusiasts who come to enjoy the towering evergreens, moss-covered paths, and peaceful views across the water. Yet beneath its serene surface lies a history and energy that has given rise to numerous accounts of unexplained phenomena. Visitors have reported cold spots, whispering voices, and fleeting figures in the mist, suggesting that Seward Park holds secrets that extend far beyond its natural beauty. The park's dense forest is central to its haunted reputation. Trails weave through thick groves of fir, cedar, and maple, where sunlight filters down in mottled patterns and the air is cool and damp. Hikers often describe feeling sudden drops in temperature, sometimes localized to a few feet of trail, as if an invisible presence has passed nearby. These cold spots are accompanied by an eerie stillness, a silence that seems to swallow ordinary sounds of wind or wildlife. Many report an instinctive unease in these areas, as if the forest itself is watching, or as though unseen eyes are tracking every step. Whispering voices are another common phenomenon. Visitors frequently describe hearing soft murmurs just beyond earshot, voices that are indistinct yet persistent. Some report that the whispers mimic conversations or call out their names, fading when they try to focus on their source. The voices are often described as sorrowful or pleading, hinting at unresolved emotions that cling to the forest. Evening hikers are most likely to encounter these auditory anomalies when the light fades, shadows lengthen, and the natural sounds of the park become subdued, allowing the whispers to stand out in sharp contrast. Fog adds to Seward Park's haunting atmosphere. On misty mornings or damp evenings, the forest seems to take on a dreamlike quality, with shapes emerging from the haze, only to vanish moments later. Visitors have reported seeing figures moving between trees or standing silently along the paths. These figures are often described as human in form, but intangible, disappearing when approached, leaving only an impression of presence and the faintest rustling of leaves. Some hikers say that these apparitions seem to watch without hostility, almost mournfully, as if caught between worlds. Local legends suggest that many of the spirits seen in Seward Park are campers who became lost in the woods, some succumbing to exposure, accidents, or other misfortunes. Over time, the stories of these tragedies have blended into the park's lore, with witnesses claiming that the spirits continued to wander the forest, retracing their last steps or lingering near areas where they were last seen. Some report seeing ghostly tents or remnants of long-abandoned campsites, and occasionally, the sound of a fire crackling or the rustle of a tarp in the wind. Despite there being no one present, Seward Park's shoreline is another site of eerie experiences. The forest gives way to the lake, where fog often rolls in from the water, obscuring the distant shore and creating a liminal space between land and water. Walkers along the edge sometimes report seeing figures standing at the water's edge or moving along the beach, vanishing as they approach. Others have described the sensation of footsteps behind them on empty paths, echoing softly against the damp ground. The combination of water, forest, and mist creates conditions that amplify the park's mysterious qualities, making the boundary between the natural and the supernatural feel fluid. Photographs taken in Seward Park occasionally reveal anomalies. Some visitors capture faint silhouettes among the trees, orbs of light hovering above the ground, or blurred figures that seem out of place. While skeptics often attribute these images to lighting, motion, or photographic artifacts, many who witness the phenomena in person insist the experiences are far more immediate and chilling. Dogs brought to the park are also known to react to unseen presences, barking at empty spaces, hesitating at specific spots along the trail, or refusing to follow their owners through areas where paranormal activity is said to be concentrated. The park's more isolated trails are particularly prone to strange experiences. Hikers report a feeling of disorientation, as if the forest shifts subtly, paths looping back on themselves, or leading into areas that feel unfamiliar despite prior exploration. Some describe a sudden heaviness or oppressive sensation, like a weight pressing down on the shoulders, accompanied by the whisper of voices in the wind. Even experienced hikers often feel compelled to turn back when these sensations intensify, as if the park itself is urging them away from areas where its secrets linger most strongly. Some witnesses describe interactions with the apparitions as subtle and fleeting. A hiker might see a shadowy figure standing among the trees, only for it to vanish when attention is focused on it directly. Others have reported feeling the brush of a hand or a shift in the air as a ghostly presence passes by, accompanied by the faint impression of being guided or observed. These experiences often leave a lingering sense of unease, but also fascination, as though the forest itself contains stories that are just out of reach. Even during the daytime, Seward Park exhibits qualities that many find unsettling. Shadows move in unusual patterns, wind shifts unexpectedly, and certain areas feel heavier or more charged than others. Longtime visitors and park staff report hearing whispers or seeing movement out of the corner of their eyes, suggesting that the park's mysterious energy is not limited to nighttime encounters. The combination of dense forest, lakeside mist, and the park's history of lost travelers creates an environment where both imagination and residual energy seem to converge. Despite its reputation for the supernatural, Seward Park remains a beloved destination. Hikers, families, and outdoor enthusiasts continue to explore its trails and shoreline, drawn by its natural beauty and tranquility. The ghost stories and strange phenomena add a layer of intrigue, inviting curiosity and respect for the land's hidden histories. Whether the experiences are the result of lingering spirits, environmental factors, or the human mind's sensitivity to isolation and atmosphere, they are undeniably compelling. leaving those who encounter them with memories that blend the ordinary with the extraordinary. Seward Park is more than just an urban forest. It is a space where history, tragedy, and mystery converge. The dense trees, foggy trails, and lakeside mists provide a setting where cold spots, whispering voices, and fleeting figures are part of the landscape. Visitors are reminded that even in the heart of a city, the past can linger, and the stories of those who were lost in the woods continue to echo among the trees, waiting to be sensed by those who walk the trails with eyes and ears open to the unknown. Carkeek Park in Seattle is a scenic urban park nestled in the city's northwest, known for its lush forests, winding trails, and the peaceful flow of Piper's Creek. By day, it is a haven for families, dog walkers, and hikers who come to enjoy the natural beauty, playgrounds, and scenic overlooks. However, beneath its serene exterior lies a history of strange and unexplained phenomena that have long captured the curiosity of locals and paranormal enthusiasts. Visitors report hearing the laughter of children in areas where no one is present, seeing shadowy figures along the creek, and experiencing faint cries and footsteps after dark, suggesting that the park may be more than just a tranquil escape from the city. The most commonly reported activity occurs near Piper's Creek, a winding waterway that flows through the park and provides a natural habitat for salmon and other wildlife. On quiet evenings, visitors have described seeing shadowy figures moving along the banks, often appearing humanoid but lacking distinct features. These figures are sometimes glimpsed in the corner of the eye, disappearing when approached or illuminated with a flashlight. Some witnesses report the sensation of being watched while walking along the creek, an unsettling feeling that seems to grow stronger as darkness falls and the trees cast long, shifting shadows across the path. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the sound of children laughing or playing, despite the absence of anyone in the area. Visitors walking along the trails or near playgrounds after dusk have described faint, echoing laughter that seems to come from just beyond reach. The sound is often intermittent, sometimes appearing to circle the observer, creating the sensation that unseen children are moving through the woods around them. Some accounts describe the laughter as joyful, yet faintly melancholic, giving the impression of echoes from the past or spirits caught between worlds. In some instances, those who follow the laughter find nothing, leaving only an empty clearing or a darkened path. Paranormal enthusiasts who explore the park after dark have reported recording faint cries and footsteps, often in areas far removed from the main trails. These sounds are usually captured on audio devices, appearing as soft, intermittent noises that cannot be attributed to wind, wildlife, or nearby city activity. Some investigators claim that the footsteps seem to follow the path of the creek or trail, stopping and starting in a pattern that suggests intentional movement. The cries are sometimes interpreted as calls for help, though their source remains entirely elusive. Many researchers suggest that the energy of the park retains traces of past events, possibly connected to lost children or previous tragedies, though the specifics are difficult to verify. Shadowy figures are frequently reported in the forested areas of the park, where dense trees and undergrowth create pockets of low visibility. Walkers have described humanoid shapes standing among the trees or moving silently between trunks, vanishing as soon as they are directly observed. These sightings are often accompanied by subtle, sensory anomalies, such as sudden drops in temperature, a prickling sensation along the skin, or the faint smell of damp earth mixed with an undefinable scent that cannot be traced. Dogs brought to the park often react to these unseen presences, barking or hesitating as if sensing something beyond human perception. The park's history offers some context for these experiences. Carkeek Park was once a private farm and later became a public park in the mid-20th century, incorporating natural creek areas, forests, and recreational spaces. While there is no documented history of large-scale tragedies within the park, the natural landscape and dense woods create an environment conducive to folklore and unexplained occurrences. Many locals speculate that the spirits may be connected to children who were lost or died near the creek long ago, or that the energy stems from the land itself, retaining echoes of countless human interactions over the decades. Even during the day, visitors sometimes report odd experiences. Shadows appear to shift independently of sunlight. Subtle whispers seem to carry across empty fields, and fleeting glimpses of figures are occasionally seen among the trees. While these occurrences are less pronounced than those reported at night, they suggest that the park's mysterious energy is not limited to darkness, and that some presence may linger quietly even in the light of day. Photographs taken at Carkeek Park sometimes reveal anomalies that cannot be easily explained. Images occasionally show faint silhouettes along the creek or near the forested trails, or small, glowing orbs hovering in areas where no natural light source exists. While skeptics attribute these effects to lighting, dust, or camera artifacts, those who witness the phenomena in person insist that they experience something far more tangible. The combination of visual, auditory, and sensory anomalies gives the park a reputation as one of Seattle's more enigmatic natural spaces, drawing both curious visitors and dedicated paranormal investigators. The playgrounds and open areas, particularly in the western sections of the park, are also sites of frequent activity. Witnesses have described hearing the distinct sound of children playing on swings or sliding down slides, even when the equipment is empty. Some report that these sounds come and go without warning, sometimes circling them or seeming to follow them along trails. The experience often leaves a lingering sense of nostalgia mixed with unease, as if the echoes of past moments are replaying in the present, visible only to those sensitive to the park's subtle energy. Even the creek itself is a source of mysterious encounters. Late-night visitors walking along the water report sudden splashes, ripples, or the sound of water being disturbed when no wildlife is visible. Some describe seeing figures standing near the edge, watching silently before vanishing, leaving only the sound of flowing water and an uncanny stillness in their wake. These encounters, combined with the laughter, footsteps, and shadowy shapes, create a layered and immersive experience, blending natural beauty with the lingering presence of something unknown. Despite its haunted reputation, Carkeek Park remains a cherished public space. Families, hikers, and nature enthusiasts continue to enjoy its trails, playgrounds, and creekside paths, drawn by both its scenic appeal and the allure of the unexplained. The stories of ghostly children, shadowy figures, and phantom footsteps add an element of intrigue, encouraging curiosity while reminding visitors to tread respectfully through the park's woods and along its creek. For those willing to explore after dark, Carkeek Park offers an experience where the ordinary and the extraordinary intersect. The laughter, the whispers, the fleeting shadows, and the footsteps all contribute to a sense that the park holds memories that refuse to fade, preserving echoes of the past among the trees, along the creek, and across the trails. Whether these phenomena are the product of lingering spirits, heightened perception, or a combination of both, they create an atmosphere that is as haunting as it is captivating, making every visit a journey into both nature and the unknown. Alki Beach Park in Seattle is a picturesque stretch of shoreline known for its sweeping views of Elliott Bay, the Olympic Mountains, and the downtown skyline. By day, it is a lively destination filled with beachgoers, joggers, families, and cyclists enjoying the sandy shores and nearby promenade. Yet beneath the sunlit beauty of Alki Beach lies a reputation for strange and unexplained activity. Locals and visitors have reported seeing figures in old-fashioned attire wandering the shoreline, feeling sudden cold breezes, and hearing faint whispers carried on the wind even during warm summer nights. Many believe these spectral manifestations are the spirits of sailors lost at sea decades ago, their presence lingering along the beach where they once hoped to return safely to land. The most common accounts involve shadowy figures walking along the water's edge or standing silently on the sand. Witnesses describe these apparitions as wearing clothing from the early 20th century or even late 19th century, with long coats, hats, or simple work attire that seems out of place in modern times. Observers often report that the figures move slowly and deliberately, sometimes staring toward the bay, as if searching for something or someone that never returned. When approached, the figures vanish suddenly, leaving only the faint sound of waves and a lingering chill in the air. The fleeting nature of these encounters has contributed to Alki Beach's reputation as a place where the past intersects with the present, and where the boundary between the living and the dead feels especially thin. Cold breezes are another hallmark of the beach's paranormal activity. Even on nights when temperatures are unusually warm, visitors have described sudden gusts of icy air rolling across the sand, concentrated around areas where apparitions are reported. The gusts are often accompanied by a feeling of heaviness or an inexplicable weight pressing down on the shoulders. Some witnesses describe these breezes as brushing against their skin, moving around them in unnatural patterns, or following them along the shoreline, creating a disorienting sensation that something unseen is nearby. Whispers carried on the wind are frequently reported in conjunction with these cold spots. Visitors walking along the promenade or the sand in the evening often hear faint voices, sometimes calling names, other times muttering indistinct phrases. The whispers are usually soft and fleeting, fading when one tries to locate their source, and they are often described as urgent, melancholic, or hauntingly unresolved. Some speculate that these are the voices of sailors or fishermen who never returned home, trapped in a liminal state between the sea and shore. Their spirits lingering along the coastline where they once worked or perished. The shoreline itself seems to amplify these phenomena. The open expanse of water, combined with the reflective surface of the bay and the sound of waves breaking against the sand, creates conditions where small noises or visual anomalies are magnified. People have reported seeing faint shapes emerging from the water or standing at the edge of the surf, only to vanish when they step closer. Others describe seeing distant figures walking along the beach, their silhouettes illuminated by moonlight or city lights across the bay, moving with a purpose that feels separate from ordinary pedestrians or beachgoers. Photographers and paranormal enthusiasts are often drawn to Alki Beach after sunset, hoping to capture evidence of the unexplained. Images sometimes reveal faint silhouettes along the sand or reflections of figures in the wet shoreline that are not visible to the naked eye. Orbs of light occasionally appear in photos, hovering above the water or floating near the promenade. While skeptics suggest these phenomena can be explained by camera artifacts, reflections, or long exposures, many witnesses insist that the experiences they have, in person seeing movement, feeling chills, or hearing whispers, cannot be explained by simple, technical anomalies. Historical context provides additional insight into the park's spectral reputation. Alki Beach has a long maritime history, with the waters of Elliott Bay serving as a site for shipping, fishing, and transportation for more than a century. Sailors and fishermen often faced perilous conditions, and numerous accidents and drownings occurred along the bay. Some theorists suggest that the apparitions represent those who were lost at sea, their spirits drawn to the beach in search of safety or to remain near the place they once called home. The old-fashioned clothing reported by witnesses reinforces this idea, suggesting a connection to earlier generations and maritime tragedies long since past. Witnesses often describe a combination of visual, auditory, and sensory phenomena during their experiences. A visitor may see a figure walking along the water while feeling a sudden cold gust brush past them and hearing faint murmurs or whispers carried on the breeze. Dogs brought along on evening walks are sometimes observed reacting to unseen presences, barking at empty spaces or refusing to move along certain stretches of sand. Even those unfamiliar with the park's ghost stories often report an inexplicable sense of unease when venturing near the water after dark. The experience of visiting Alki Beach at night is highly atmospheric. Moonlight glimmers across the bay, waves lap rhythmically at the shore, and the city lights across the water create a distant, shimmering horizon. In this setting, the apparitions and phenomena reported by visitors are often intensified. Figures in old-fashioned attire may appear more distinct, cold gusts feel sharper, and whispers carried on the wind seem closer. The combination of natural beauty and spectral activity creates an environment where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, leaving visitors with a lasting impression of mystery. Despite these unsettling accounts, Alki Beach remains a popular and beloved destination. Families, joggers, and tourists continue to frequent the beach, drawn by its scenic views, recreational opportunities, and historic charm. The stories of ghostly sailors, whispers, and sudden chills add an extra layer of intrigue, attracting those with a fascination for the paranormal while enriching the park's cultural lore. For many, the knowledge of these phenomena enhances the experience of walking along the sand at night, offering a thrilling sense of connection to the past. Whether the reported figures are lingering spirits of sailors lost at sea, residual energy carried by the wind, or products of the imagination heightened by the setting, the experiences endure. Shadows in old-fashioned attire, cold breezes rolling across the sand, and whispers floating on the night air all contributes to Alki Beach Park's reputation as a place where history, mystery, and the supernatural converge. Visitors leave with memories of the shoreline that blend natural beauty with an eerie sense of presence, a reminder that even along the sunlit coastlines of Seattle, the past can linger quietly, waiting to be glimpsed by those who walk the sand after dark. Point Defiance Park in Tacoma is a vast and historic park that stretches over 700 acres along the shores of Puget Sound, known for its dense forests, scenic cliffs, and winding trails. The park draws visitors for hiking, picnicking, and wildlife viewing. Yet beneath its picturesque beauty lies a reputation for unexplained phenomena and ghostly encounters. Visitors have reported ghostly figures near the cliffs, echoing footsteps along empty paths, and even captured shadowy silhouettes on camera, appearing to move independently of the natural elements. The cliffs at Point Defiance are a focal point for many ghost sightings. Hikers and evening walkers describe seeing figures standing near the edge, often looking out toward the water, motionless and silhouetted against the fading light. These apparitions are most often reported at dusk or after dark, when shadows lengthen and the park quiets down. Witnesses note that the figures often wear clothing that seems outdated, sometimes resembling attire from earlier decades. When approached, the figures vanish, leaving behind only the sound of wind rushing through the trees or waves breaking against the rocky shore below. The sudden disappearance often leaves visitors shaken, with a lingering sense that someone or something was observing them just moments before. Echoing footsteps are another frequently reported phenomenon in Point Defiance Park. Walkers on secluded trails or forested paths have described hearing the unmistakable sound of boots or shoes striking the ground behind them, even when the trails are empty. The footsteps often match their own pace, creating a disorienting and unnerving experience. Some witnesses have reported that the sounds stop abruptly when they turn to look, while others describe the footsteps continuing, fading into the distance, as if receding along a parallel path invisible to the human eye. These auditory anomalies are often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, adding to the sense of otherworldliness. Shadowy silhouettes captured on camera provide further evidence of the park's strange activity. Photographers and visitors armed with phones or cameras sometimes review images taken along trails or near cliff edges, only to discover dark, indistinct figures in places where no one was present. The silhouettes often appear to be moving against the wind or standing in positions that defy natural explanation. While skeptics attribute these images to lens artifacts, lighting anomalies, or long exposures, those who capture them insist that the experiences are far more tangible in person. Many describe a palpable sense of presence while taking the photos, as though someone is watching from just beyond the frame. The park's dense forests and winding trails contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Under the canopy of towering evergreens, sunlight filters through leaves in shifting patterns, casting fleeting shadows that play tricks on the eye. Visitors often report catching glimpses of figures moving between trees or along the trail, disappearing when looked at directly. Some describe seeing a shadow pause to watch before retreating into the underbrush. Even the wildlife seems affected. Dogs brought to the park may bark or hesitate along certain stretches, reacting to something invisible yet unmistakably present. Point Defiance Park has a long and layered history that may help explain its spectral reputation. The land has been inhabited for centuries, originally by indigenous communities who revered the forests, cliffs, and shoreline. In later years, it became a site of military and civic activity, with trails, structures, and other developments introduced over time. Stories of accidents, unexplained deaths, and natural hazards along cliffs and forested paths contribute to the belief that spirits linger, bound to the locations where they met sudden or tragic ends. Some suggest that the park's dramatic landscapes, sheer cliffs, dense trees, and fog-laden trails act as conduits for residual energy, preserving impressions of past lives. Visitors frequently describe a combination of visual, auditory, and sensory experiences. The layering of these sensations often leaves a lasting impression, blending fear with curiosity and drawing some visitors back to explore further. Many who frequent the park after dark do so with a heightened awareness, learning to read subtle shifts in shadow, sound, and temperature that hint at unseen presences. Even during daylight, the park exhibits unusual qualities that some find unsettling. Shadows appear to move independently of sunlight. Wind seems to carry whispers through the trees, and fleeting glimpses of figures are occasionally seen among the undergrowth. Longtime visitors and staff report that these experiences, though less intense than nighttime encounters, suggest a lingering energy that persists regardless of lighting or human activity. The cliffs and forested trails, in particular, are often cited as areas where the past seems to converge with the present. Photographers and paranormal investigators are drawn to Point Defiance, parked for both its natural beauty and its unexplained phenomena. Many capture images of faint, ghostly shapes near the cliffs, dark silhouettes moving across trails, or orbs of light hovering among the trees. Audio recordings occasionally capture footsteps, whispers, or distant voices that cannot be explained by wildlife or ambient noise. While skeptics often argue for natural explanations, witnesses insist that the combination of visual, auditory, and physical sensations cannot be fully dismissed. The park's appeal lies in the blending of scenic grandeur and the supernatural. Visitors can enjoy panoramic views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains, while simultaneously being aware of the mysterious presences reported along trails and cliffs. The juxtaposition of natural beauty and unexplained phenomena creates a unique experience, where ordinary activities, hiking, walking, or photographing, intersect with the extraordinary. Whether the ghostly figures, echoing footsteps, and shadowy silhouettes are manifestations of lingering spirits, psychological impressions, or a combination of both, the reports continue. Point Defiance Park remains a place where visitors are reminded of the past, the unseen, and the mysterious. The cliffs, forested paths, and hidden corners offer encounters that are fleeting yet unforgettable, leaving those who walk its trails with a sense of awe and a lingering awareness that the park holds secrets that may never be fully explained. Oriental Park in Seattle is one of those places that hides in plain sight. Tucked away between quiet residential streets, it's easy to pass by without realizing it's there. A small wooden sign marks the entrance, half covered in ivy, and a narrow trail winds through dense stands of cedar and maple trees. During the day, it's peacefully overlooked slice of green in the city. But when night falls, the park transforms into something else entirely. The stillness deepens, the air grows heavy, and those who wander there after sunset often speak of things that should not exist. Locals say that Oriental Park feels older than it looks. Though the city maintains the grounds, the trees seem to grow in unnatural patterns, twisting as if shaped by unseen hands. The paths are uneven, and the ground feels strangely soft underfoot, as if it remembers every step ever taken there. Few people visit after dark, and those who have seldom return. Some speak of shadowy figures among the tree stall, thin shapes that seem to flicker in and out of sight. Others claim to have seen dim lantern lights moving slowly through the fog, gliding across the trails in utter silence. The first recorded stories about the park date back to the early 1900s, when the area was still part of a small settlement. Before Seattle expanded westward, the land served as a resting place for travelers. a place where rail workers and fishermen would camp overnight. Old newspaper archives mention a few strange disappearances from that time, men who set up tents along the hillside and were never seen again. Their belongings would be found days later, untouched, their fires still burning low. The locals began calling the area the Whispering Grove, and even after it became a city park, decades later, that name never truly vanished. One of the most persistent tales concerns the so-called lantern walkers. Dozens of visitors over the years have described seeing faint lights drifting between the trees late at night. The glow resembles old oil lanterns, swaying gently as if carried by unseen hands. Witnesses say the lights move in single file, following the trails as though retracing a forgotten route. When approached, they fade instantly, leaving behind only the scent of smoke and damp earth. Some believe these lights belong to the spirits of those early settlers who vanished, doomed to wander the forest in search of a way home. Another unsettling detail, reported by nearly every nighttime visitor, is the whispering. At first, it sounds like leaves rustling or the wind shifting through branches. But the longer one listens, the more the sound takes shapes, oft, deliberate, human. The whispers seem to come from all directions at once, sometimes calling out a name, sometimes echoing fragments of sentences no one can fully understand. A few people have even claimed that the whispers spoke directly to them, repeating their own names in tones that were neither male nor female, but something in between. The Seattle Parks Department officially lists Oriental Park as historically unremarkable, but not everyone agrees. In the late 1800s, before the city established formal cemeteries, settlers often buried their dead in small, unmarked plots on the outskirts of town. Rayner's research suggested that a portion of the park sits atop one such site, though no official record confirms it. He noted that erosion and development over the decades may have disturbed the graves, possibly explaining the strange reports that persist to this day. There's also the story of the old caretaker. According to legend, a man named Joseph Colburn worked in the area in the 1920s, tending to the trails and clearing brush. One night, after telling his wife he was heading to the park to investigate strange noises, he never came home. A search party found his lantern near the central trailhead, still lit but lying on its side. His body was never found. Some say Colburn's ghost still walks the paths, searching for whatever he went to confront that night. The moving lantern lights seen today are often attributed to him, though others believe they're something far older. Modern visitors who've dared to explore Oriental Park at night tell eerily consistent stories. Some describe walking for what felt like hours, only to find themselves back at the entrance without realizing they'd turned around. Others report sudden drops in temperature, or the sensation of being brushed by unseen hands. A few have taken photos, and though most show nothing unusual, a handful reveal dark, human-like silhouettes standing deep in the woods where no one else was present. The figures are always blurred, as if caught mid-motion, and seem to lean toward the camera, as though aware they're being watched. Those who live nearby occasionally hear things after midnight: soft footsteps on the gravel path, faint laughter, or the distinct sound of a lantern chain rattling in the wind. Yet when they look outside, the park remains completely still. Over the years, many have tried to rationalize it as tricks of light, echoes from the nearby streets, or the work of local pranksters. But as one longtime resident put it, you can explain away a sound or a shadow. But when the air changes, when you feel something staring at you from between the trees, you know it's real. Even seasoned paranormal investigators approach Oriental Park with caution. One group reported their audio recorders picking up distant whispers that matched the cadence of human speech but contained no recognizable words. Another team captured electromagnetic spikes near the trail's highest point, though no electrical sources were nearby. Perhaps the most chilling account came from a camera operator who claimed that as he adjusted his lens, someone whispered directly in his ear, "Don't follow the lights." When he turned, no one was there. Marymore Park in Redmond, Washington, is known as the crown jewel of King County's park system, a sprawling 640-acre expanse of open fields, wooded trails, and historic remnants of the region's past. By day, it's full of life, joggers, families, and picnics under the open sky. But when the sun dips behind the trees and the park empties out, a different story unfolds. Beneath its beauty, Merrymore carries whispers of another kind of life, shadows that move without reason, laughter that doesn't belong to the living, and presences that watch from the edges of the forest. The hauntings of Merrymore often center around the older, more forgotten parts of the park, places where remnants of the past still stand. Near the eastern side of the grounds, a few crumbling foundations and abandoned farm structures remain from when the land was once part of a 19th century homestead. Locals call it the Ghost Farm. Visitors who wander too close after dusk often report a strange stillness that descends suddenly, silencing even the distant hum of nearby roads. Some say they've seen figures near the decaying barn, silhouettes of people dressed in old-fashioned clothing, standing motionless until approached, only to vanish like mist. One evening, a Redmond resident walking his dog near the ruins noticed a young boy in overalls standing beside a rusted fence. Thinking he was lost, the man called out, but the boy didn't answer. Instead, he turned slowly and smiled. The man said it was a smile that didn't feel right, too cold, too wide. Then, in the blink of an eye, the figure was gone. His dog whimpered and refused to move forward, staring fixedly at the empty space where the boy had stood. Many of the park's most unsettling reports come from the playground area. Swings move on their own, even when the air is completely still. Sometimes just one swing will begin to sway, as if pushed by unseen hands. Those who linger claim to hear faint giggling in the air, children's laughter echoing faintly through the open field, though the playground is empty. On rare nights, witnesses have described the sound of a ball bouncing softly across the pavement, followed by the light patter of running footsteps that fade into silence. There's a particularly chilling story from a park worker who once stayed late to close the gates. He passed by the playground after dark and saw 3 swings moving steadily back and forth. At first, he assumed the wind had picked up. Then he realized the air was perfectly still. When he stepped closer, the laughter started faint and high-pitched, circling him. He turned in every direction, but no one was there. The swings kept moving, rhythmic and deliberate, as if unseen children were playing a game that only they could see. The man never worked the night shift again. Not all of Merrymore's ghostly activity is confined to the playground. The wooded trails that wrap around the park have long been the source of darker encounters. Hikers and cyclists have reported seeing figures along the tree-lined shadows that dart between trunks or follow from a distance before melting back into the darkness. Some describe hearing whispers that seem to come from just behind them, soft and indistinct, repeating words they can't quite make out. A few have claimed that when they look back, the forest appears slightly different, paths twisting in unfamiliar directions, the trees closing in like a living thing. One story that's circulated among locals for years involves a couple who decided to take a moonlit walk through the woods. They followed one of the trails near the Sammamish River until they reached a clearing. There, they saw what appeared to be children playing 5 or 6 small figures, chasing one another in circles. The couple called out, thinking it was a late-night game, but the children didn't respond. Then, slowly, they began to fade, one by one, until only the empty field remained. The couple fled, but not before hearing faint laughter behind them, laughter that echoed all the way back to the parking lot. Some paranormal enthusiasts believe the activity in Merrymore Park is tied to its layered history. Long before it became a public park, the land was home to Coast Salish tribes, who considered the area along the Sammamish River spiritually significant. Later, it became farmland, and remnants of old homesteads, barns, and irrigation systems can still be found hidden among the trees. There were accidents on this land, farm equipment, mishaps, drownings in the nearby river, and tragic fires that destroyed early settlements. Some suggest the park's hauntings are echoes of these events, replaying endlessly across time. Others think the energy comes from the sheer emotion left behind by generations who lived and worked here. The laughter of children, the toil of farmers, the quiet grief of loss of it absorbed into the soil and wood, manifesting now as restless spirits. One eerie phenomenon, often mentioned by late-night visitors, involves the park's amphitheater area, where outdoor concerts are held in summer. When the stage stands empty and silent, some people claim to hear faint music drifting through the air notes from a distant piano or a violin playing an indistinguishable tune. It's never loud, just a soft, haunting melody that fades when anyone tries to find its source. Even the dogs at Marymore's famous off-leash area seem sensitive to whatever lingers there. Owners often notice their pets stopping abruptly, staring into the woods, their ears pricked as if hearing something invisible. A few dogs have even refused to enter certain parts of the park, whining and backing away as though sensing an unseen presence. Security staff and maintenance workers tell similar stories. One described walking near the historic Clyde's Mansion, old estate that still stands within the park, and seeing movement in the upper windows long after closing time. When he shined his flashlight upward, the curtains fluttered, though there was no wind. Moments later, a pale figure appeared in the glass, watching him silently before fading back into the dark. Despite its reputation, Marymore Park remains one of Redmond's most beloved places. But there is an unspoken understanding among those who visit after dark. You daren't linger near the swings, and you don't stray too deep into the woods alone. The park's beauty hides an undercurrent of something older, something watching. The laughter that drifts across the field is playful, yet hollow. The shadows at the edge of the forest move with purpose, but without life. Lake Sammamish State Park in Issaquah, Washington, is known for its calm waters, scenic trails, and lush forests that draw thousands of visitors every year. But beneath its tranquil surface lies a darker legend that locals speak of in low tones. The stories begin with the lake itself. Its deep blue waters stretch out peacefully beneath the mountains. But many who have fished or camped along its shores claim that the lake hides more than just fish. Late at night, when the moonlight glimmers across the rippling surface, figures are sometimes seen waiting near the shallows. They appear human at first, silhouettes, standing knee-deep in the water, unmoving. When approached, they dissolve into mist or sink soundlessly below the surface, leaving only widening ripples. Witnesses describe them as pale, featureless shapes, almost translucent, as if made of the water itself. Fishermen, who launch their boats before dawn sometimes, speak of strange reflections, faces appearing in the lake beside their own, watching silently. One seasoned angler once told of seeing a man standing far out in the lake where the water should have been too deep to stand. The figure raised an arm, as if to signal for help, and then vanished beneath the surface. Search teams found no body, no evidence of anyone missing, but that same fisherman never returned to Lake Sammamish again. The park's history gives these tales an unsettling context. Over the decades, accidents and disappearances have occurred in and around the lake. Swimmers who never resurfaced, hikers who went missing on nearby trails, fishermen whose boats were found drifting empty. While many of these incidents have logical explanations, the sheer number of them has fed the belief that something unseen lingers in the area. Some locals call it the pool, an invisible force said to draw the lost back to the lake again and again. Visitors walking the wooded trails that border the shoreline often speak of feeling followed. It begins as a simple unease, a prickling at the back of the neck. Then come the faint sounds, footsteps matching their own, rustling in the brush, the snap of a twig just behind them. When they turn around, the path is empty. Some describe seeing brief shadows darting between trees, too tall and too quick to be animals. A few claim to have heard voices calling their names from the forest, familiar voices, sometimes of loved ones who weren't there. One hiker recalled an experience that left him shaken for weeks. He was walking the main trail near dusk when he noticed a figure ahead of him, moving slowly through the trees. It looked like a man wearing an old fishing jacket, his head bowed. Thinking the stranger might be lost, the hiker called out. The figure stopped, but didn't turn around. When the hiker approached, he realized that the man's feet weren't touching the ground. They hovered several inches above the path. The figure then drifted silently into the trees and disappeared. The hiker ran the rest of the way back to his car without looking back. Campers who stay near the water's edge also tell of eerie nights. Tents rustle when there's no wind. The sound of splashing echoes across the lake even though no boats are on the water. Sometimes, faint laughter carries through the fog, a sound described as human but distorted, like voices underwater. Those brave enough to investigate find only stillness, yet many claim that the laughter follows them all the way back to their campsites. A former park ranger once admitted that he avoided patrolling the far side of the park after sunset. He said his flashlight would flicker uncontrollably in certain spots along the trail, and on several occasions, he caught glimpses of figures in the corner of his eye, men and women in tattered outdoor gear, faces blank and pale. One night, while locking up a maintenance shed, he heard what sounded like a chorus of whispers behind him. When he turned, no one was there, but the door he had just closed was standing wide open again. Locals whispered that the spirits of those who drowned in the lake still wander its shores, searching for a way home. Others believe that the land itself is ancient and restless, tied to older tragedies that predate the park's founding. The native Coast Salish peoples once considered the area sacred, a place of both life and death. Some say that ancient burial grounds once lay near the lake's edge before rising waters swallowed them. If true, it might explain why so many claimed to feel an unseen presence, hear why the boundary between the living and the dead seems so thin. On foggy mornings, early visitors sometimes see footprints in the damp sand that lead from the water and vanish halfway up the beach. No one ever sees who made them. Others have found old fishing lures, rusted tackle boxes, or bits of decayed rope lying on the shore where no one had been. These relics are often found in clusters, as if left purposefully, offerings from another time. Even during daylight, there are moments when the lake's beauty feels deceptive. A sudden stillness will fall across the water, birds will stop singing, and the breeze will die. Those moments never last long, but they always leave behind a heavy silence, as if the lake is holding its breath. It's said that if you stand at the dock during these pauses and look long enough into the water, you might see shapes moving beneath the surface, dark outlines drifting just below sight, circling, waiting. At night, the reflections on the lake can play cruel tricks. Campers and late-night walkers sometimes catch sight of their own reflections waving back a second too late, or see other faces beside their own in the mirrored surface. These moments are fleeting, but unforgettable. Some leave convinced they've glimpsed the souls of those the lake has taken. Others refuse to talk about what they saw at all. The stories continue to this day, told around campfires and shared among rangers and locals. Each one carries the same themes: cold air that feels like a touch, footsteps that follow too closely, and shadows that linger just long enough to be real. No one knows whether the spirits of Lake Sammamish are truly the lost hikers and fishermen of old, or whether the lake itself holds a consciousness, quietly drawing those who wander too close. Discovery Trail in Bellevue, Washington, stretches quietly through the city's green heart, a winding path of asphalt and gravel that cuts through dense woods, wetlands, and quiet neighborhoods. By day, it's alive with joggers, cyclists, and families enjoying the gentle escape from urban noise. But once the daylight fades and the trees swallow the last of the sun, the trail becomes something else entirely. A place where sound changes, where shadows move just beyond sight, and where the boundary between the living and the unseen seems to thin with every step deeper into the forest. Those who frequent Discovery Trail after dark speak of a strange unease that begins without warning. The rustle of leaves, the crunch of gravel beneath your shoes, everything feels amplified, as if the forest itself is listening. Many joggers report hearing footsteps behind them that match their pace exactly. When they slow, the sound slows. When they stop, it stops too. But when they turn around, the path is empty. The silence that follows is heavier than before, pressing down on the air like a weight. One runner described hearing someone whisper his name in a soft, almost friendly tone as he passed under a canopy of trees near the midpoint of the trail. Thinking it was a friend catching up, he turned to look, but there was no one there. The whisper came again, closer this time, from right behind his ear. He sprinted the rest of the way without looking back. These experiences aren't isolated. Hikers, late-night dog walkers, and even early morning commuters have all shared similar accounts. The most common reports involve figures that appear briefly between the tree shapes that look human, standing just off the trail. They vanish the moment they're noticed, slipping back into the foliage as though they were never there. Some witnesses say the figures seem to watch them, silent and motionless, while others describe the sensation of being followed for long stretches of the path. One man, a retired police officer, recounted an encounter during an evening walk with his dog. The animal froze, growling low, and refused to move forward. Ahead on the trail, the man saw what looked like a woman standing in the shadows. She wore a long coat, and her hair hung over her face. When he called out to ask if she needed help, she turned slightly, but her face was completely featureless. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin. The man blinked, and she was gone. His dog bolted in the opposite direction, dragging him back toward the parking lot. The trail's dense foliage seems to play tricks on perception. Even experienced hikers admit that once the sun sets, it's easy to lose your sense of direction. The trees crowd close, and the sound of the nearby freeway fades away, replaced by rustling leaves and distant, indistinct murmurs. Some believe the forest itself holds echoes as snatches of voices from those who've walked there before, repeating endlessly through the trees. There's one stretch near the wetlands where the activity seems strongest. Locals refer to it as the Whispering Bend. Countless joggers have reported hearing voices there, calling names that sound eerily familiar, sometimes even their own. The voices are never loud, just soft enough to make one question whether they were real. A few say they've caught sight of figures darting between the trees at that bend, always just out of reach, always vanishing when followed. Several paranormal investigators have visited Discovery Trail, drawn by the consistency of the stories. They've recorded unexplained audio faint whispers, footsteps on empty paths, and a distinct sound like breathing picked up by sensitive microphones. One investigator claimed that their EMF equipment spiked dramatically near the old bridge where the trail crosses a narrow creek. The air temperature dropped suddenly, and moments later, they all heard a voice say a single word: stay. Some connect the hauntings to the land's history. Before the city expanded, this area was part of a vast forest, once inhabited by native tribes who used the surrounding wetlands as hunting and gathering grounds. Later, it became farmland, and several homesteads stood nearby in the 1800s. Old maps reveal that a logging road once cut through the same path that Discovery Trail now follows. There were accidents, workers injured, wagons overturned, and a few men who reportedly disappeared into the woods and were never found. Others whisper of an old homestead fire that consumed a small family farm somewhere near the northern section. Though records are sparse, some believe the figures seen on the trail could be remnants of those lost souls. Nighttime cyclists have their own tales. They describe riding through stretches where their headlights seem to dim without reason, the beam flickering as though struggling against an unseen force. One cyclist swore he saw a runner ahead of him, wearing bright white shoes that reflected in his light. But as he got closer, the figure suddenly stepped off the path and disappeared into a thicket with no sound or motion. When he stopped to check, there were no footprints in the dirt, and the forest was silent. It's not just sights and sounds that disturb visitors. Many describe a physical sensation like being watched, or worse, being followed by something unseen that stays just beyond reach. The air grows colder, the forest feels tighter, and an instinctive fear begins to rise. Some people claim that the further you go after sunset, the stronger that presence becomes. It's not aggressive, they say, just persistent, as if something is studying you, waiting for you to acknowledge it. There are occasional stories of lost time. A woman once reported walking a short section of the trail. She knew well a 10-minute walk at most. When she returned to her car, nearly an hour had passed, though she swore she'd walked straight without stopping. Her watch had also stopped during that period, only to start ticking again once she left the park. Security patrols have also noted strange activity. Motion sensors along the trail occasionally trigger with no visible cause. Thermal cameras have captured fleeting heat signatures shaped like people, but none last longer than a few seconds. On more than one occasion, rangers have responded to reports of someone screaming deep in the woods, only to find silence and empty trails. Despite the unsettling tales, The Discovery Trail remains one of Bellevue's most beautiful outdoor spaces. Families still walk there daily, unaware of what might be watching from the trees. But those who've experienced the trail after dark speak differently. They talk of whispers that seem to breathe their names, of fleeting shapes that melt into the foliage, of footsteps that echo long after they've stopped walking. Ravenna Park in Seattle has long been a place where beauty and unease intertwine. Nestled within a steep ravine, it offers winding trails beneath towering maples and evergreens. A canopy so dense that sunlight filters through in shifting, ghost-like patterns. During the day, the park feels peaceful, almost enchanted with the quiet trickle of the creek and the earthy scent of damp soil. But as dusk settles, that calm turns into something else. The air thickens, the sounds change, and an uncanny stillness replaces the familiar hum of life. Locals say the park transforms at night, revealing its other side, one inhabited by shadows that move when they shouldn't, and voices that whisper from nowhere. Many who walk its paths after sunset report the same unsettling experiences: the sense of being followed, the sound of footsteps echoing on gravel, the flicker of movement just beyond the edge of vision. It often begins subtly, like the feeling of someone walking just a few paces behind. When visitors turn around, there's nothing but the empty path, winding into darkness. Park rangers have heard the stories too. Over the years, they've received reports of hikers who went missing for hours only to reappear disoriented, unable to explain where they'd been. One ranger recalled finding a man standing knee-deep in the creek late one night, staring blankly into the water. When asked what he was doing, the man simply replied, "She asked me to follow her," before walking away without another word. The ranger never saw him again. Among the park's older residents, there's talk of what came before Ravenna was a city park. In the late 1800s, the ravine was a dense, almost impenetrable forest, known for its massive old-growth trees. Early settlers described it as a place of unusual quiet, where even birds seemed hesitant to sing. There were rumors that Native American tribes once avoided the area after dark, believing the ravine to be a passageway for spirits where the living and the dead could cross paths. That history still seems to cling to the air. Visitors walking the lower trails often report faint cries echoing across the ravine. Some describe them as the sound of a woman calling for help. Others say it's more like a child sobbing, far off yet close enough to chill the spine. One local runner, a woman named Marissa, shared her experience after jogging through the park one misty evening. She said she had been running the same loop for years without incident. But on this particular night, as the fog thickened, she began to feel uneasy. Then she heard footsteps behind her, light, rhythmic, keeping pace. Thinking it was another jogger, she didn't look back. But when she slowed, the footsteps stopped too. When she started again, they resumed. Finally, she turned and saw a dark silhouette standing motionless in the fog. "It wasn't facing me," she said, "but it was there, clear as day. And then, it just stepped into the trees and disappeared." In another account, two college students exploring the park late at night claimed to see an old wooden swing moving on its own near a cluster of decaying foundations hidden off the main trail. The structures are remnants of the park's early days, when a small community and a natural springs resort once stood nearby. The swings creaked softly in the still air, though there was no wind. The students laughed it off at first, until one felt a cold hand brushed his shoulder. They ran until they reached the main road, too frightened to look back. Electronic disturbances have also been reported within Ravenna Park. Phones flicker and lose signal in certain areas, particularly near the ravine's narrow bridge. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain within minutes, and sometimes photographs taken at night reveal faint shapes, blurred outlines of figures that weren't visible at the time. Paranormal investigators who visited claim to have captured EVPs, whispered voices saying names, short phrases like "don't go" or "help me." The city maintains the park carefully, trimming overgrowth and keeping trails safe. Yet there's a quiet understanding among the maintenance crews. No one lingers after dark. Some even claim that the forest sounds different than that the rustle of leaves, isn't just wind, but something moving through the trees, watching, waiting. There's a spot near the creek where visitors often feel the strongest presence. The air grows inexplicably colder, and the forest seems to hold its breath. Hikers who pause there say they hear faint footsteps approaching from behind, though the path is empty. A few have even felt something brush past them, unseen but undeniably real. The most unnerving part, they say, is that when they leave the area, it feels as if something follows, its gaze heavy, its footsteps fading only when they reach the edge of the park. Even during daylight, certain parts of Ravenna Park retain that sense of watchfulness. The trails twist through steep terrain and thick undergrowth, creating the illusion of movement among the shadows. But those who've seen it firsthand insist it's more than illusion. The park holds stories, some written in history, others whispered through the trees. And for those who walk its paths alone at dusk, the line between past and present, between the living and the lost, begins to blur. Franklin Park in Seattle sits quietly between neighborhoods, a small stretch of trees and playgrounds surrounded by everyday life. By day, it's filled with laughter, dog walkers, and the sounds of children playing. The park seems ordinary, peaceful, but as evening settles and the sun dips behind the horizon, the mood changes. The laughter fades, replaced by whispers of something unseen. Locals say that Franklin Park has a darker side, one that comes alive when the light drains from the sky. The earliest reports of strange happenings go back decades, long before the park became what it is today. The area once held a small school and several old houses that were later demolished to make way for public recreation space. Strange things began to happen soon after construction. The sound of running footsteps at night, children's laughter echoing through the trees when no one was there, and swings that moved gently on their own, even when the air was perfectly still. Visitors still report these same occurrences today. Parents who bring their children to the playground during late afternoons say the swings sometimes begin to sway long after everyone has left. The motion is slow, rhythmic, like someone unseen is idly playing. Some witnesses describe hearing faint giggles in the distance, light and joyful, but with an undertone that feels off, like laughter played on a broken record, looping endlessly. When she approached the spot where they had vanished, there was nothing there. No footprints, no sound, just a rustle of leaves. Her dog refused to move any closer, its body trembling, eyes fixed on the empty trees. At night, the park becomes unnervingly quiet. Streetlights cast long shadows across the paths, and the forested corners seem to swallow sound. People who walk through after dark often describe feeling as though they're being watched. A few have managed to take photos, only to find strange blurs or shapes resembling figures of children in the background, though no one had been nearby at the time. A local runner who uses the park as part of his evening route once reported hearing footsteps behind him as he jogged the loop trail. They were light and quick, like a child's. When he slowed, the footsteps stopped. When he turned around, the path behind him was empty. He continued running, but the sounds started again, closer, faster. The feeling of being followed grew unbearable, and when he finally left the park, he swore he heard a child whisper his name just before he reached the streetlights. The strange sightings aren't limited to the playground. Near the wooded section on the park's northern side, several visitors have claimed to see small figures darting between trees, their shapes barely visible in the half-light. One man who followed the crying sound late one evening said it led him in circles until he realized he was standing back where he started, his footprints overlapping in the dirt. Longtime residents whisper about an old story tied to the Landa legend of a school that once stood near the park's edge in the early 1900s. According to local accounts, the school caught fire one winter night when several children were inside for an after-hours event. The fire spread quickly, and though most escaped, a few did not. No official record remains, but the story has endured through generations. Park workers, too, have their own unsettling experiences. One groundskeeper said he avoids working near the swings after sunset. He claims that no matter how still the air is, the swings will start to move when he passes by. Once, he stopped to watch as all three swings began to sway in unison, their chains creaking softly. The sound grew louder until it filled the entire playground, and then, suddenly, all movement stopped. He left his tools behind that night and refused to return until morning. Security officers have also reported strange motion sensor triggers during the night. The cameras pick up shapes moving near the playground, but when they check the footage, the figures are faint, translucent, and fast. One frame reportedly showed what looked like a small hand pressed against the camera lens, though no one had been there in person. Some nights, passers-by say they can see faint lights dancing in the distance, tiny orbs of white or blue that hover above the grass before vanishing into thin air. Paranormal investigators who visited the park have picked up high electromagnetic readings near the playground and along the wooded paths. Another clip captured the sound of a child's laughter, clear, close, and unmistakably human, even though the area was empty. Despite all these accounts, Franklin Park doesn't feel evil. Those who encountered the unexplained say the energy there is more sad than threatening, feeling of longing, as though the spirits are simply replaying moments of joy that once were. Still, not every story is harmless. Some visitors leave with an overwhelming sense of dread, a heaviness that follows them home. They report hearing faint laughter later that night, long after leaving the park, as if something from Franklin followed them back. One woman claimed she woke to the sound of footsteps running down her hallway. But when she checked, the house was empty. Today, Franklin Park remains a beloved part of its neighborhood, though few linger there after dark. The swings still creak softly in the windless night, and the faint patter of invisible footsteps sometimes echoes across the paths. Others believe the land itself holds their memories, replaying them endlessly under the moonlight. Twin Falls in North Bend is a place of breathtaking beauty, a cascade of silver water tumbling down Moscovite rock, hidden deep within the forests of the Cascade foothills. By day, the sound of the rushing falls fills the canyon with life. Sunlight catches the mist, and hikers pause to take in the shimmering veil that rises from the base of the cliffs. Yet, as night draws near, that same mist takes on another character, one that feels watchful, even alive. Visitors who linger too long after sunset speak of things that move within the fog, of faces that form from the spray and vanish when they try to look closer. The legend of Twin Falls runs deep, whispered among locals and hikers alike. Some call it a place of beauty haunted by tragedy, others a portal where the veil between worlds thins. The sound of the water, constant and thunderous, hides other noises beneath it, cries that don't quite belong to the living. It's said that if you stand near the overlook at twilight, you can hear the echoes of voices rising from the canyon below, soft at first, then growing clearer pleas for help that fade into the roar of the river. Long before the trails were marked, this canyon was considered sacred by local tribes. The waters were said to be guarded by spirits who protected the land and punished those who disturbed it. Early settlers told stories of strange disappearances near the falls, hunters who went into the forest and never returned, their tracks leading down to the river's edge before vanishing completely. Some claimed to see shadowy shapes standing in the mist where the water meets the rocks, unmoving, as if watching anyone who dared to come too close. One of the oldest legends tells of a young woman who drowned there in the early 1900s. According to the tale, she slipped from the edge while trying to retrieve a keepsake that had fallen into the river. Her body was never recovered, swept away by the powerful current. In the weeks that followed, locals began hearing strange sounds near the falls, soft sobbing that seemed to drift through the mist. Some said they saw a figure in white near the base of the waterfall, appearing for only a moment before fading into the spray. Hikers still report seeing her face pale, her hair drifting as if underwater, her eyes wide with sorrow. One witness, a man who visited Twin Falls during a foggy evening, described seeing something that chilled him to his core. He had been photographing the waterfall when he noticed a shape standing near the rocks, human in form but translucent, its outline blurred by the mist. Thinking it was another visitor, he called out, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly turned its head toward him, and he saw what looked like the faint image of a woman's face, eyes dark, mouth open as if crying out. Then she was gone, dissolving into the fog as though she had never been there at all. Others have encountered something different entirely. A group of hikers once camped near the river's bend, not far from the main trail. Around midnight, they were awakened by the sound of splashing in the water, followed by a long, drawn-out scream that echoed through the canyon. When they ran to investigate, the forest was empty. The next morning, they found no footprints near the riverbank, only small depressions in the wet sand, too small to belong to any of them. One of the campers swore she saw a face staring back at her from beneath the water, pale and expressionless, before it vanished with the current. There are also reports of shadowy figures that move along the cliffs and trees, most often seen just as the light begins to fade. They appear in groups or alone, their shapes faint and indistinct, like silhouettes formed from smoke. Some believe they are the spirits of those who have lost their lives in the area, victims of accidents, drownings, or even suicides. The canyon's beauty hides danger. The rocks are slick, and the waters below deceptively deep. Over the years, more than a few visitors have met their end at Twin Falls, their names becoming part of its quiet, ghostly lore. The eerie cries that echo through the canyon remain one of the most unsettling mysteries. Experienced hikers, familiar with the sounds of wildlife and water, insist that these cries are different to human, too emotional. They come in waves, sometimes overlapping, as if multiple voices are calling out from beneath the falls. Recordings have captured these strange sounds, but analysis yields nothing conclusive on the layers of white noise and the thunder of the cascade. Yet, when played back, faint tones can sometimes be heard, something like a woman's voice, whispering words that no one can quite make out. Nighttime brings the heaviest atmosphere. The mist thickens, swallowing the trail and blurring the edges of the world. Lights from flashlights refract strangely, forming shapes that seem to move on their own. Some hikers describe feeling cold spots in the air, sudden drops in temperature that leave their breath visible even in summer. Others say the forest goes unnaturally quiet at times, as though the world itself is holding its breath. A park ranger once recounted his own unsettling experience. He had been patrolling after hours, ensuring that no one was near the overlook. As he stood by the railing, he heard footsteps approaching from behind, soft, deliberate. Thinking it was another ranger, he turned, but no one was there. The sound continued, circling him. Then he heard a splash below, followed by what he swore was a woman's voice crying out from the canyon. When he looked down toward the falls, he saw something impossible, a face forming in the mist, eyes staring up at him, before melting back into the fog. He left his post early that night and refused to return to the area after dark again. Even in daylight, Twin Falls carries an energy that feels ancient and charged. The mist never quite behaves like normal water vapor. Many who visit say they feel a strange pull to stare into it, as if something within the falls wants to be seen. But whenever they focus, the image changes shapes, twist, faces emerge and fade, leaving only the sense that someone or something was watching them in return. To this day, no explanation has been found for the phenomena that occur in the canyon. Scientists attribute the strange sounds to acoustics, the way water and rock bounce sound waves through the narrow gorge. Others dismiss the faces in the mist as tricks of light and imagination. But those who've felt the cold brush of air against their skin, who've seen eyes staring back from the fog, know there's more to it than that. Bridle Trails State Park in Kirkland, Washington, is known for its winding forest paths and miles of scenic equestrian trails. During the day, it's a peaceful haven where riders guide their horses through ferns and tall evergreens, their laughter echoing softly between the trees. But when night falls, the park takes on a very different atmosphere. The same trails that feel inviting in daylight become unsettlingly silent, and even the wind seems to whisper of things unseen. Locals who know the land well say it's not wise to wander there after dark, for sometimes you're not alone on the trail. For decades, visitors and nearby residents have reported seeing ghostly riders in the park, figures on horseback that emerge soundlessly from the darkness, their outlines faint and mist-like. Some witnesses describe hearing hoofbeats behind them, slow and rhythmic, though the ground is empty when they turn around. Others speak of glimpsing pale horses moving between the trees, vanishing before their eyes. The apparitions are most often seen on foggy nights, when moonlight filters weakly through the forest canopy, and the trails feel suspended between worlds. The hauntings of bridle trails are said to stretch back to the park's earliest days. Before it became a public space, the land was part of a series of rural homesteads and early horse farms. In the early 1900s, riders would use the forest paths to move between small towns, hauling supplies or training young horses. The dense woods were both beautiful and dangerous. Travelers spoke of deep gullies, sudden storms, and animals spooked by unseen movements in the dark. Several accidents were recorded over the years, riders thrown from their mounts or lost in the fog, never to be found. Locals believe some of those lost souls still ride the trails today. One of the most well-known legends tells of a rider named Eleanor Price, a young woman who lived nearby in the 1920s. She was known for her skill with horses and often rode alone through the woods, even at dusk. One autumn evening, she set out to bring a new coat home from a neighboring farm. When she didn't return, search parties scoured the trails for days. Her horse was eventually found wandering near a ravine, its saddle torn, and its eyes wide with terror. Eleanor herself was never recovered. Witnesses who've seen her describe a strange calm before the encounter. The forest grows still, and the air feels heavy, as if holding its breath. Then, through the trees, the faint glow of a white horse appears, moving steadily down the path. Some say the rider looks lost, her head turning from side to side, as though searching for something or someone. She never speaks, and she never stops. The vision fades as quickly as it appears, dissolving into mist. But Eleanor isn't the only presence reported in bridle trails. Riders training their horses at dawn have seen dark shapes moving alongside them in the forest, shadowy riders who match their pace for a few moments before vanishing. In the stillness of the early morning, they've heard what sounds like distant hoofbeats on gravel, echoing from nowhere. Even the horses themselves seem to sense it. Some freeze on the trail, ears pricked and muscles trembling, as if seeing something their riders cannot. A local equestrian instructor once told of a night she stayed late at the park to check on a student's horse. The sun had long since set, and the forest was veiled in fog. As she walked toward the stables, she heard the unmistakable sound of galloping fast, powerful, drawing nearer. She stepped off the path, expecting to see another rider approach, but when the sound reached her, nothing appeared. The hoofbeats pounded past her and faded into the distance. The ground beneath her boots never trembled, as if the sound had come from another world. Another chilling encounter came from two teenagers who decided to cut through the park after a late-night gathering. They took one of the narrower trails, lit only by their flashlights. About halfway through, they noticed a shape ahead, a tall figure on horseback, standing motionless in the fog. Thinking it was a park ranger, they called out, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly turned toward them. They described its face as blank, featureless, like a mask of pale light. The horse's eyes glowed faintly before both figures faded, leaving behind the lingering sound of hooves receding down the path. Locals who live near the park say that on quiet nights, especially in the fall, they sometimes hear hoofbeats echoing across the road. Some even claim to see faint silhouettes of riders crossing open clearings, their outlines faint as smoke. One family reported hearing a horse neighing in their backyard at 2 in the morning, though no animal was there. When they looked toward the tree line, they saw what they thought was a rider in dark clothing watching them from the shadows. By the time they turned on the porch light, he was gone. Paranormal investigators have visited bridle trails multiple times over the years, attempting to record evidence of the ghostly riders. They've captured strange audio, distant whinnies, the clink of reins, and a woman's voice whispering faintly. EMF meters spike unexpectedly, and cold spots appear near old hitching posts and along certain bends of the trail. One team reported hearing a horse exhale directly beside them, though nothing was visible. Some believe the spirits are residual echoes of the park's long equestrian history, energy imprinted on the land from decades of riders passing through. Others think the hauntings are more intelligent spirits, aware of their surroundings, forever retracing familiar paths. Whatever the explanation, few doubt that something lingers there, Even experienced riders speak with quiet respect about the park at night. They say there are certain trails where their horses refuse to go, where the animals tense and snort nervously, their hooves planted firmly, as if sensing something ahead. One rider described the feeling perfectly. It's like you can hear a procession just ahead of you, but it's not on this side of time. Lake Washington Park in Kirkland is a place of still beauty and quiet mystery. The park's green spaces and shaded paths create a sense of calm, where the breeze carries the faint scent of cedar and water lilies. But as night falls and the last rays of light fade behind the hills, the mood changes. The lake becomes a dark mirror, its surface smooth and silent, reflecting not just the trees and stars but, some say, things that aren't really there. Visitors who linger past dusk often speak of strange sensations. It begins with a quiet, uneasy feeling of being watched. The sound of faint whispers carried on the wind. Shadows ripple across the surface, even when the lake is still. Some have reported seeing figures standing at the shoreline, gazing across the water, only to vanish when approached. Others claim to have seen their own reflections shifting, replaced by faces they don't recognize. Long before Kirkland became a thriving community, the shores of Lake Washington were home to the Duwamish people, who held deep reverence for the lake. They believed that water was a boundary between worlds, a place where spirits could travel freely. Elders spoke of the shadow people, spirits of those who drowned or never received proper rites, who wandered along the water's edge, searching for peace. Many locals think those same spirits remain. One of the park's oldest legends tells of a fisherman who disappeared in the early 1900s. His boat was found drifting near the shore, nets still cast, but he was gone. Days later, searchers spotted a figure standing waist-deep in the lake at dawn. They called out, but the man turned and faded into the mist. Some believed it was the missing fisherman's ghost, forever bound to the place where he vanished. To this day, early risers walking by the water sometimes glimpse a lone silhouette standing just beyond the reeds. A chilling number of encounters take place near the small wooden pier that juts into the lake. Visitors have described walking out onto it after dark, drawn by the sound of soft voices. The air grows colder there, and a faint mist often rises even on clear nights. One man recalled hearing his name whispered from somewhere below the dock, faint, deliberate, unmistakable. When he leaned over the railing to look into the water, he saw his reflection staring back, but behind it, another face hovered just beneath the surface, pale and motionless. He stumbled back, but when he looked again, the water was empty. Locals tell of an unsettling pattern, people hearing whispers that seem to know them. Some claim the voices call their names or mimic the sound of loved ones. A jogger once recounted, stopping near the park's edge to catch her breath, she heard her brother's voice, clear and familiar, calling from the water. He had drowned years before in another part of the lake. She said she felt an overwhelming urge to step closer, to see him again, but something deep within warned her not to. She ran instead, swearing she could feel eyes on her back the entire way. The park's shoreline, particularly near the willow trees, is said to be the most active area. After sunset, faint figures are seen moving among the trees, drifting shapes that seem half hidden in shadow. They appear human, though indistinct and slender, gliding rather than walking. Some witnesses describe them as reflections that detach from the surface of the water and move freely through the air before dissolving into mist. On especially still nights, the reflections in the lake seem to shift on their own, no longer matching the world above them. A local couple once visited the park to watch the moon rise over the water. As they sat on a bench, they noticed ripples spreading outward from the center of the lake. Though there was no wind, the ripples grew larger until they reached the shore, where they seemed to form shapes, faint outlines of hands pressing against the surface. Then, as quickly as it began, the water went still again. Later, when reviewing a video they had taken, they noticed something strange. Two dark figures standing behind them in the reflection on the water, though no one else had been there. Park rangers have heard enough strange reports to grow cautious after dark. One ranger, who patrolled the grounds for over a decade, said he often avoided walking too close to the water at night. He once caught what he thought was a trespasser near the shoreline. The figure stood perfectly still, back turned, illuminated faintly by the moonlight. When he called out, The figure stepped forward and vanished into the lake without making a sound. The ranger searched the area for hours, but found no footprints, no splash, no sign that anyone had been there. Some paranormal researchers believe the lake itself acts as a conduit, amplifying the emotional energy of the area. With its long history of drownings, accidents, and unmarked burials along the shore, they theorize that the water holds an imprint of the past, a kind of memory that replays through the ages. Recordings taken by investigators have captured faint voices beneath the sound of lapping waves, murmurs that seem to repeat certain names or phrases. Cameras aimed at the water often pick up strange distortions, as if the reflections themselves are alive. But perhaps the most unsettling reports come from those who live nearby. Several residents have claimed to see figures standing at the edge of the park from their windows at night, dark silhouettes facing the lake. When they go outside to look, the figures are gone. Others say they sometimes wake to the sound of splashing, followed by silence. One woman, whose home overlooks the water, said she awoke one night to find her window fogged from the outside, as though someone had pressed their face against the glass. Even on calm nights, there's a feeling that something watches from beneath the lake's surface. The wind that moves across the water carries faint whispers, words that fade before they can be understood. Visitors often leave with the same uneasy sensation that something followed them, or worse, that something recognized them. Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park in Issaquah is one of those places where nature feels ancient, untouched, and aware. Spanning more than 3,000 acres of deep forest, moss-draped trees, and misty trails, it draws hikers with its quiet beauty and sense of isolation. Yet beneath its calm surface, something else seems to stir, something unseen. Watching from between the trees, for decades, visitors have whispered about strange encounters here. Sudden drops in temperature, whispers with no source, and fleeting figures that vanish when approached. Locals say that Cougar Mountain never truly sleeps, and those who wander too deep into its woods might find themselves walking beside spirits that never left. The park has a long and layered history. Before it became a protected natural area, it was a place of mining, tragedy, and death. In the late 1800s, coal mining operations spread across the Issaquah Hills, with tunnels carved into the mountain and entire communities built around them. Accidents were common. Collapses, explosions, and flooding claimed the lives of dozens of miners. Many of those tunnels were sealed over time, but some say their spirits remain trapped beneath the earth, wandering through the dark veins of the mountain. On quiet days, hikers have claimed to hear the faint echo of metal striking rock, the rhythm of distant pickaxes, continuing long after the last miner was buried. Near the remains of an old mining shaft, known as the Red Town area, visitors have reported particularly eerie sensations. Cold spots linger even in summer, and the air carries a faint scent of smoke or damp earth. One hiker described hearing low voices, men speaking in old-fashioned accents, muttering as though working only to find himself alone. Another visitor, exploring at dusk, said she saw a light flickering deep among the trees, moving slowly like a lantern. Thinking it was another person, she called out, but the light vanished instantly, leaving behind only silence and a heavy feeling of being watched. There are also stories about figures in the forest, shadowy outlines that appear at the edge of vision, only to disappear when approached. Hikers who travel the Clay Pit Road Trail often report the same phenomenon, the sound of footsteps behind them, perfectly matched to their own pace. When they stop, the sound stops. When they walk again, it resumes. One man claimed that while hiking alone one foggy morning, he felt something brush his shoulder. When he turned, he saw a figure, a tall man in what looked like miner's clothes, standing several yards away, face obscured by the mist. Before the hiker could say anything, the man turned and walked straight into the trees, fading until there was nothing left but the faint echo of boots on wet leaves. The mountain's history is also tied to more recent tragedies. In the 1970s and 1980s, Cougar Mountain became known for a series of mysterious disappearances. Most were attributed to hikers losing their way or succumbing to the rough terrain, but the rumors say otherwise. Some claim that those who vanished had been drawn off the trail by whispers calling their name. Park rangers dismiss such talk as superstition, but enough incidents occurred that the stories persisted. Even now, some hikers say they hear their own names spoken softly from the shadows, sometimes in their own voice, sometimes in another's. Nightfall changes the entire character of Cougar Mountain. The forest grows dense, the darkness complete. Sounds seem amplified, the wind sighs through the branches. The creak of old trees mimics footsteps, and the faint rustle of leaves sounds like movement just beyond the flashlight's reach. Many who venture there after sunset describe feeling a pressure in the air, as though the mountain itself is holding its breath. Electronic devices malfunction, cameras refuse to focus, and compasses spin without direction. There's a section of the park called the Anti-Aircraft Peak, where the remains of World War II installations still stand. During the war, the site was used as a defense station, and soldiers were stationed there for months at a time. Some visitors report seeing men in military uniforms walking through the fog near the ruins. Their outlines faint, their faces pale. One night, a jogger claimed she saw a soldier sitting on a stone wall, head bowed, holding what looked like a rifle. When she called out to ask if he was all right, he lifted his head and she saw that his eyes were empty, hollow sockets. The figure faded into the mist before her flashlight could touch it. Other strange phenomena seem to occur deep within the western trails, near the Cougar Mountain cave system. The caves are long sealed, but people claim to hear knocking sounds from within, or low moans that echo through the stone. Park workers investigating the noise have found nothing, though they admit the sounds are real. Theories range from underground water flow to settling rock, but some refuse to accept natural explanations. Those who have stood near the cave entrances at dusk describe feeling an overwhelming sadness, as though the earth itself is mourning something long forgotten. Animals, too, behave strangely in this park. Dogs often refuse to go down certain trails, barking or whining at unseen forces. Birds go silent without warning. Even seasoned hikers say the forest sometimes feels alive in a way that's hard to explain. Its silence heavy, its shadows moving when they shouldn't. One ranger, who has worked there for over 20 years, once said, "The mountain watches you. You feel it in your gut. It knows when you're there." There's also the recurring story of a woman in white seen wandering the trails near Coal Creek Falls. She appears lost, her expression sorrowful, sometimes motioning for help before vanishing into the trees. Some believe she's the ghost of a miner's wife who lost her husband in an accident and searched for him until she died. Others think she's something older, spirit-bound to the mountain itself, appearing as a warning to those who stray too far. The whispers remain one of Cougar Mountain's most chilling mysteries. Many hikers claim to hear them in the densest parts of the forest. They come softly, like wind through the leaves, but sometimes form distinct words: a name, a plea, a warning. A few hikers say they've followed the voices, only to find themselves lost, disoriented, and miles from where they began. Those who make it back often describe feeling drained, as though something in the forest tried to lead them somewhere they weren't meant to go. Even by day, Cougar Mountain carries a stillness that feels unnatural. Sunlight filters through the tall firs, but shadows seem to linger too long. Every sound feels amplified: the trickle of streams, the creak of branches, the faint sigh of air through moss. It's a place of contradiction, vibrant with life, yet heavy with memories of the dead. Saltwater State Park in Des Moines, Washington, is a place where land, sea, and memory seem to merge. During the day, it's alive with families picnicking along the shore, seagulls wheeling overhead, and divers exploring the underwater reefs. The rhythmic sound of the waves meeting the sand brings peace to those who walk the beach. But as night falls, when the tide rises and the air turns cold, the park becomes something else entirely. The same waves that soothe by day begin to whisper, and the cliffs cast long, shifting shadows that seem to move on their own. Visitors who linger past dark speak of unseen figures, disembodied voices, and footsteps that echo across the rocks when no one else is there. Saltwater State Park has a long and quiet history, but its land has witnessed far more than leisure. Long before it became a park, The beach served as a boundary between tribal territories, a place where uneasy truces were made, and sometimes where those truces broke. Local legends claim that the spirits of warriors lost to the tides still wander the shore, their voices carried on the wind. Some nights, the ocean sounds less like waves and more like distant chanting. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a couple who camped near the cliffs. It was late summer, and the night sky was clear, the water reflecting the faint light of the moon. Expecting another camper, they peeked out, but saw nothing. The sound continued, pacing slowly back and forth, circling the camp. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Moments later, a whisper came from the darkness to words, soft and deliberate. "Go home." They packed up and left before dawn, and when they returned the next morning to retrieve something they'd forgotten, they found the sand around their campsite marked with faint footprints leading straight into the sea. Others have reported seeing figures along the cliffs that separate the beach from the forested trails above. These shadows are often tall and thin, moving against the light of the moon or fog. Sometimes they appear solid, human-like until someone shines a flashlight on them. Then they vanish instantly, leaving only the sound of wind rushing through the trees. Divers who emerge from the water at night sometimes speak of seeing someone standing at the edge of the cliff, watching silently, only for that figure to disappear when they look a second time. A park ranger once described an encounter that left him shaken. While patrolling near the beach entrance after hours, he noticed what looked like a lantern swinging through the fog near the tide line. Thinking a camper had wandered off, he approached, calling out. The light continued to move, but grew dimmer with each step until it vanished completely. When he reached the spot, there was no one there, no footprints, no debris, nothing but wet sand. Then, behind him, he heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking slowly. Deliberate steps that stopped the moment he turned around. He left the area without finishing his round, returning only in daylight to find the same stretch of sand empty and undisturbed. Some visitors have also heard voices where none should be. The park's picnic area, especially near the old stone fire pits, is said to carry whispers on still nights. A faint conversation drifts through the air, indistinct but rhythmic, like the rise and fall of speech just out of reach. One man who came to the park to photograph the shoreline late at night recorded what he thought was ocean noise. When he listened later, he heard something faint beneath the waves. Laughter, soft and hollow, as though coming from just beyond the microphone's range. The laughter faded into a long sigh before going silent. Saltwater's cliffs are known for their unsettling presence after sunset. The trail that winds along them feels unusually cold, even in summer. Hikers describe feeling watched, their skin prickling as though unseen eyes follow from the shadows. One woman, walking the trail alone at dusk, reported hearing someone behind her. She turned to see a dark figure, standing motionless, several yards away. Thinking it was another visitor, she continued walking, but the footsteps followed, perfectly matching her pace. When she finally turned again, the figure was closer, though she hadn't heard it move. It had no discernible features, only a human outline darker than the surrounding night. She ran the rest of the way back to the parking lot, and when she looked back, the path was empty. Even the sea itself seems to carry a haunting energy. At low tide, the beach reveals tide pools and small crabs scuttling among the rocks. But after dark, the waterline takes on a strange, mirror-like stillness. Some claim to see reflections that don't belong, faces in the water where no one stands above it, eyes staring up from beneath the surface. Fishermen, who cast their lines at night, say they've felt sudden tugs that don't come from fish, followed by a chill that creeps up their arms. A few have even described hearing faint splashes just offshore, as though someone were wading through the shallows, though the water remains undisturbed. Local divers share another legend, the tale of the gray swimmer. According to rumor, the figure of a man sometimes appears beneath the waves near the artificial reef. He moves with slow, unnatural grace, his eyes open and unblinking, his skin pale gray in the filtered light. When divers approach, he turns toward them and drifts into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of cold current that chills even through wetsuits. Though no diver has captured proof of him, Those who've seen the figure never dive there again. On certain nights, fog settles over the park so thick that visibility drops to almost nothing. In those moments, the beach feels suspended in time. The only sounds are the faint crash of waves and the occasional crack of driftwood. Yet within that fog, many report hearing movement like footsteps on gravel, faint voices whispering names, and sometimes the sound of someone breathing just over their shoulder. A few brave souls who stayed until the fog lifts say they found fresh footprints leading in opposite directions, some toward the forest, others toward the open sea. There are no official explanations for the strange events at Saltwater State Park. Some attribute them to the area's layered history, its tribal past, its time as a mining site, and even its role during World War II, when the beach served as a training ground. Theories suggest that those who lost their lives near the cliffs or in the cold waters never fully left. Their echoes remain, carried on the salt air, wandering between the tides. Visitors today rarely stay after dark. The park closes at dusk, and few test the rule. Yet even those who leave before nightfall sometimes describe the feeling of being followed to their cars, a soft rhythm of footsteps fading into the gravel, stopping just as they turn the key. For a moment, the world falls still, and the sea whispers quietly in the distance, as though calling them back. Peninsula Park in Seattle appears peaceful by day, a small, manicured stretch of greenery framed by historic fountains, stone pathways, and towering trees that whisper when the wind moves through. Children laugh, joggers pass by, and the air smells faintly of damp grass and earth. Yet, as daylight fades, the mood shifts. The fountains seem louder, the air heavier, and the once inviting paths take on an uncanny stillness. Locals have whispered for decades that the park's beauty hides something restless beneath it. Those who have stayed past dusk claim that when the lights flicker on, they are not alone. The stories began long before the city grew around it. Peninsula Park was once part of an old estate, owned by a wealthy family, whose mansion burned to the ground in the early 1900s. Only fragments of the foundation remain buried beneath the park's soil, but the memory of that fire seems to linger. According to local legend, several servants and guests perished in the blaze, trapped inside as the structure collapsed. When the city later turned the grounds into a public park, the fountains and statues were built near where the old mansion once stood. Since then, strange occurrences have been tied to those very spots. Visitors often report seeing faint figures wandering between the fountains after dark shapes that move slowly, as though drifting rather than walking. Some describe them as transparent silhouettes, others as fully formed apparitions, dressed in old-fashioned clothes. One man recalled walking past the main fountain one foggy evening and seeing a woman in a long gown standing by the water. She appeared so real that he thought a historical reenactment might be taking place. But when he turned to look again, she was gone, leaving only ripples spreading across the fountain's surface. Another visitor described a chilling encounter near one of the park's marble statues. She had been sitting on a bench just after sunset, scrolling through her phone, when she felt a sudden coldness brush across the back of her neck like icy fingers dragging lightly over her skin. Startled, she turned, expecting to see someone behind her, but the path was empty. When she looked down, she noticed that the statue's shadow seemed to move slightly. Even though there was no wind and no one nearby to cast it, she left quickly, her breath visible in the oddly frigid air. There's a story that groundskeepers tell, passed down through staff who have worked the park for years. One of them, a night watchman, claimed that during a late inspection, he saw lights glowing around the central fountain, soft, golden orbs hovering just above the water. Thinking it was a reflection from nearby streetlights, he turned away, but when he looked again, the orbs had risen higher, drifting toward the trees before fading one by one. Moments later, he heard the faint sound of footsteps splashing in the fountain basin, followed by quiet laughter that echoed through the empty park. He swore he was the only one on duty that night. The park statues are another source of unease. Several are modeled after classical figures, angels, muses, and guardians, but at night, they seem almost alive. Those who walk the paths in low light claim the statues appear to shift slightly when no one is looking. Some have even reported that their expressions change. A couple who visited late one evening said they noticed one angelic statue looking directly toward the fountain when they arrived. After walking the loop around the park, they returned to find it facing a different direction. The next morning, it had returned to its original pose. No explanation was ever found. Cold spots are frequent in the park, often centered around the fountains and benches. Temperatures can drop suddenly, with breath visible even in summer. Those who linger feel watched. One woman recounted feeling a cold hand slip into hers as she sat alone near the water feature, thinking it was her friend returning from the restroom. But when she looked up, no one was there. The sensation lingered for several seconds before fading away, leaving her trembling. Some claim the park comes alive most around midnight. A jogger once told of hearing voices whispering from the hedges low and indistinct, like fragments of conversation. He slowed to listen and could make out a single phrase repeated softly, "Don T, let it burn." As he turned toward the sound, the whispers stopped. Moments later, a gust of wind rustled the leaves, and he thought he saw a figure dart between the trees, its form barely more than shadow. He never ran that route again. Another strange occurrence involves a reflection in the fountain's surface. People who lean over the water at night sometimes see more than their own faces. A few describe seeing strangers staring back, figures dressed in clothing from another era, watching silently before their images distort and vanish with the ripples. One young couple took a photo by the fountain one evening, using a flash. When they looked at the picture later, a faint outline of a man in a dark coat appeared, standing behind them, though no one else had been in the park. Local paranormal investigators have attempted to document the activity, setting up motion sensors and thermal cameras around the park. The results are always the same: occasional temperature drops, strange orbs of light, and faint audio recordings of footsteps when the area was supposedly empty. In one recording, a soft, childlike voice can be heard humming an old waltz tune, followed by what sounds like a splash of water. Not all experiences are frightening. Some believe the spirits that linger are simply echoes of the past former residents of the estate, drawn to the beauty that once surrounded their home. They seem to appear near places tied to warmth and memory: the fountains, the gardens, the benches beneath the old oak trees. But there are darker tales too: a shadowed figure that prowls the edge of the park, always just out of sight. Witnesses describe it as tall and cloaked, its outline sharper than the others, moving deliberately among the trees. Those who see it say it never approaches, but they feel an oppressive weight in its presence, as if the air itself thickens. One park visitor who encountered it described walking along the path near closing time. The lamps flickered, and the night was unusually still. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed movement near the hedges, a tall shadow gliding alongside her. When she turned to face it, there was nothing but darkness. She quickened her pace, but the sense of being followed never left. At the gate, she looked back one final time and saw a shape standing by the fountain, perfectly still, watching as she left. Discovery Bay Park in Kitsap County stretches along the tranquil waters of the bay, surrounded by dense forests and winding trails. By day, the park is a haven for families, kayakers and bird watchers. The gentle lapping of the water, the calls of seabirds, and the rustle of leaves in the wind create a sense of calm and serenity. But as twilight descends, the atmosphere changes. Shadows lengthen, the wind seems to whisper secrets, and the forested edges of the park take on an uncanny stillness. Those who linger after dark speak of things that move just beyond sight, faint voices carried across the water, and lights that appear and vanish as if the night itself is alive. The stories of Discovery Bay Park are not recent. The area has long been tied to legends of restless spirits and strange occurrences. Before settlers arrived, local tribes considered the bay and surrounding forests sacred, a place where spirits of the land and water resided. Fishermen and forest workers in the 19th and early 20th centuries spoke of seeing shadowy shapes among the trees and hearing distant laughter when no one else was around. Many of these accounts were dismissed as imagination, yet the tales persisted, passed down through generations of locals. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves shadowy figures moving silently among the forest. Visitors describe them as vaguely human in shape, but always indistinct, their edges blurring into the trees. They are rarely seen for more than a moment, vanishing when approached. A hiker who visited the park late in the evening recalled walking a trail near the northern edge of the bay. He noticed a figure standing among the trees, watching him. As he stepped closer, the shape melted into the darkness, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves. That same night, he thought he saw multiple figures along the path, each appearing for only a few seconds before disappearing entirely. Distant laughter is another common report, often described as high-pitched, playful, and fleeting. Some believe it belongs to children, while others say it carries an eerie undertone, more mournful than joyful. Campers and night fishermen have told stories of hearing the laughter drift across the water or through the forest, moving from place to place as though chasing the listener. In several accounts, the laughter is accompanied by whisper-soft, indistinct words carried on the wind. One kayaker reported paddling near the shoreline after dusk when he suddenly heard murmured phrases, almost like someone speaking in a language he didn't understand. The whispers seemed to follow him along the bay, growing louder as he reached a small inlet, only to vanish as abruptly as they began. Some of the most unsettling reports involve strange lights near the shore. Several visitors have described seeing faint glows hovering above the water or through the trees. The lights are small, often bluish or white, and move in irregular patterns. One evening, a couple walking along the boardwalk saw a cluster of lights floating near a small cove. They approached cautiously, but the lights flickered and disappeared the moment they neared. Others report similar experiences while sitting on benches near the shoreline, watching the bay at night. The lights appear for a few seconds or minutes, dancing across the water's surface before vanishing completely. Even the trails themselves seem to hold a presence. Some hikers say they feel watched, a subtle pressure at their back, or the sensation of eyes following their every movement. Cold spots are not uncommon, sudden drops in temperature that chill skin even on warm evenings. One young woman recounted walking alone along a trail near the western forest, noticing a shadow fall across her path. When she turned, nothing was there. Moments later, she felt a hand brush past her shoulder, cool and insubstantial, leaving her frozen with fear. She rushed back toward the parking area, hearing laughter and whispers that faded into the distance. The park's shoreline has its own stories. At low tide, the sand and rocks reveal small tidal pools and driftwood scattered along the edge. Many who visit at night claim that shadows flit along the water, separate from any reflection or passing boat. A fisherman, who often returns in the late evening, describes seeing what looked like human figures waiting near the shore, motionless, with their backs turned. When he approached, the figures seemed to dissolve into the mist rising from the bay. The sound of water lapping the rocks masked faint splashes and movements, making it almost impossible to distinguish between natural sounds and those of the unseen. Paranormal investigators have visited Discovery Bay Park in hopes of documenting these phenomena. Some report unusual EMF readings near the trees along the shoreline and strange anomalies in their night vision footage. Orbs of light are occasionally captured, drifting among the trees, moving in patterns that seem purposeful rather than random. Audio recordings have picked up faint whispers, indistinct words, and occasional laughter, though the source is never visible. Many of the investigators describe a pervasive feeling of being watched. A tension in the air that seems heavier than the ordinary quiet of the forest at night. Locals suggest the park holds memories of the past, lingering energies tied to human emotion and loss. Shipwrecks in the bay, accidents in the forest, and the long history of settlement may have left traces that remain in the night. The park's shadows, lights, and sounds could be echoes of lives that ended along its shores or within its woods, replaying fragments of memory to anyone sensitive enough to notice. Despite the eerie stories, the park remains a popular destination for evening walks and photography. Those who do venture out at night often share similar warnings. Be aware of your surroundings, expect sudden chills, and understand that not everything moving in the darkness is a trick of your eyes. Many report feeling compelled to leave once the sun disappears behind the hills, drawn by the whispering wind and the sense of figures lurking just beyond vision. Olympic Sculpture Park in Seattle is a striking blend of art and nature, where modern sculptures rise against the backdrop of Elliott Bay and the city skyline. By day, it's a place of exploration and inspiration. Families wander between abstract forms. Joggers pass along the walkways, and tourists capture photographs of the steel, stone, and glass installations reflecting the sun. Yet as daylight fades, the park takes on a different character. The gleaming metal and polished stone seem colder, more rigid, and the walkways echo differently under the quiet of night. Those who linger after dark speak of strange shadows, whispers, and figures that move among the sculptures, always just beyond the edge of perception. Though the park is relatively new, opening in 2007, the land itself has a long history. The area was once industrial, filled with warehouses and shipping yards. Workers tell stories from decades ago of accidents along the waterfront, of men lost to machinery and fire, their presence lingering even after the buildings were removed. Some locals believe the energy of those past tragedies carries into the present, finding new forms among the sculptures, watching from the shadows of steel and stone. Visitors frequently report seeing shadowy figures moving between the installations. These figures are rarely fully visible, sometimes only an outline, a shifting silhouette among the abstract shapes. One late evening, a photographer was capturing the reflections of a bronze sculpture in the water. As he adjusted his camera, he noticed a tall figure moving behind the sculpture, pausing as if observing him. He called out, thinking it might be another night visitor, but the figure didn't respond. When he blinked, it was gone, leaving only the quiet lapping of water against the seawall. Whispers are another common experience. They drift along the walkways, faint and indistinct, often sounding like fragments of conversation or a name being called. A woman who visited the park to take evening photographs describes standing near a large steel reinstallation when she heard her name whispered clearly. Though she was alone, she turned in every direction, expecting someone else to be nearby, but the paths were empty. The whisper repeated once more before fading into the night air, leaving her chilled and unsettled. Some reports involve moving lights among the sculptures. One couple described seeing a small glow flickering near a glass installation, moving slowly along the base as though someone were carrying a lantern. As they approached, the light vanished, leaving nothing but darkness and the faint sound of footsteps echoing on the walkway. Others have reported similar phenomena, lights appearing and disappearing among the sculptures, moving in ways that defy explanation, often drawing attention toward areas of the park that appear entirely empty. The sculptures themselves seem to hold an unsettling presence after sunset. Many of the installations are abstract, with sharp angles and reflective surfaces. Visitors report seeing distorted shadows in the reflections, sometimes human in shape, sometimes impossible. One man recalled walking past a mirror-like sculpture and noticing a figure standing behind him. When he turned, there was no one there. Yet, in the reflection, the shape remained for a moment longer, its edges shimmering before disappearing. The effect is disorienting, making it difficult to separate reflection from reality. Cold spots and sudden chills are frequent in the park after dark. Some visitors describe walking along a warm summer evening, only to feel a sudden drop in temperature near certain sculptures. One young woman recounted stopping near a tall steel piece when she felt icy fingers brush along her arm. She spun around but found no one, yet the sensation lingered for several minutes, making her skin crawl. Others have reported the same experience near the large stone installations, claiming it feels as though invisible hands pass through the air, cold and deliberate. The park's proximity to the city does little to diminish the unsettling experiences. Though cars pass on the nearby streets and lights from the downtown buildings glow in the distance, the park feels isolated at night. The usual hum of urban life seems muffled, replaced by an eerie silence punctuated only by the occasional splash of water or distant gull cry. This contrast makes the shadows and whispers feel even more pronounced, as if the park exists in a separate dimension, where time and movement follow different rules. Security personnel have reported unusual activity as well. One night, a guard making rounds described seeing a figure moving quickly along the elevated walkways, then vanish as he approached. Another guard recounted hearing footsteps behind him on the gravel path near the water's edge. He turned to confront the visitor, but the path was empty. On multiple occasions, guards have noticed motion sensors triggered without any visible cause, or lights flickering in the sculpture's reflective surfaces. Some paranormal investigators suggest that the park's sculptures, with their reflective surfaces, geometric forms, and placement along the waterfront, may amplify existing energies. The combination of water, metal, stone, and history could act as a conduit for residual presences, echoes of past lives and events. Audio recordings from night visits have picked up faint whispers, low murmurs, and irregular tapping sounds that cannot be explained by wind or wildlife. Thermal imaging has occasionally detected indistinct shapes moving along walkways where no person is present. For those who have encountered the park at night, the experience is unforgettable. Shadowy figures linger between the installations, cold air brushes along the skin, whispers drift over paths, and lights appear where no source exists. Even in a bustling city, the park transforms into a place that feels isolated, haunted by unseen observers and memories that refuse to rest. Many visitors leave with a lingering sense that the sculptures are more than art, they are markers, perhaps, of moments, lives, or events that have left a permanent impression on the land. Lincoln Park Trail in Seattle winds through dense forests, moss-covered trees, and rugged paths that overlook the Puget Sound. By day, it is a place of calm reflection. Joggers run along the trails, families explore the shoreline, and the sun filters through the thick canopy, casting dappled light on the forest floor. Yet, as evening approaches, a different energy settles over the trail. Shadows stretch longer, the rustling of leaves becomes sharper, and those who linger too long after sunset often speak of an unsettling presence, an awareness that they are not entirely alone. The most enduring legend of Lincoln Park Trail centers around a woman who vanished decades ago. According to local lore, she used to frequent the trail for long walks, enjoying the forest's solitude. One day, she never returned. Search parties combed the woods for weeks, but there was no trace of her, no footprints, no personal belongings, no indication of struggle. Her disappearance was never solved, and some say the forest itself has absorbed her essence. Since that time, hikers and evening visitors have reported feeling her presence, a restless spirit wandering the paths she once walked. Many people recount feeling watched along the trail, particularly near the wooded sections where the trees grow thick and the sunlight rarely penetrates. One jogger described running past a grove of cedar trees as the sun dipped behind the hills. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a figure standing between the trunk stall, pale and motionless. When she slowed to get a better look, it vanished. The sensation of being observed lingered for the remainder of her run, an invisible weight pressing at her back with every step. Whispers are frequently reported along the trail. They are soft and fleeting, often indistinct, carrying only fragments of words or names. One visitor recounted walking near the creek that runs through the park just after dusk. As he paused to look at the water, he thought he heard someone softly say his name. Thinking it was another hiker, he called out, but no one answered. Moments later, the voice returned, closer this time, murmuring his name in a low, breathy tone before fading completely. He left the trail immediately, convinced he had encountered something beyond the ordinary. Shadows play a central role in the trail's reputation. Hikers often notice shapes moving in the trees or along the path that vanish when confronted. One young woman recounted sitting on a bench near a clearing as twilight fell. She saw a dark form shift between the trees, its movements deliberate and silent. She turned toward it, but the space was empty. Yet, when she looked back at the trail, the figure had returned, standing where it had been only moments before. The air grew colder, and she felt a sudden chill brush past her, as if a cold hand had grazed her shoulder. Lincoln Park Trail is also known for sudden drops in temperature and eerie sensations. Walkers often experience cold spots that form without warning, even on warm summer evenings. One man reported hiking alone along a narrow part of the trail when a sudden gust of icy wind swept through, chilling him to the bone. He looked around, expecting to see an opening or breeze from the sound, but the trees were still, the forest silent. The cold lingered, pressing against him, until he hurried along the trail to reach the parking area. The presence of the woman who vanished seems to manifest most strongly in areas where the trail narrows or curves sharply. These spots are often described as hotspots for paranormal activity. Multiple hikers have reported seeing her forms, sometimes faint and distant, sometimes more solid, standing along the path, watching silently. A few have even claimed to catch glimpses of her reflection in puddles or on wet leaves, though when they look up, no one is there. Her figure is often described as wearing clothing from decades past, blending seamlessly with the shadows yet somehow distinct against the forest's green hues. Other phenomena include sounds of footsteps echoing along empty stretches of trail. One woman, walking after sunset, heard her own steps accompanied by another set, pacing slightly behind her. She stopped abruptly, expecting someone else to be nearby, but the echo continued. When she turned to check the trail behind her, it was empty. The footsteps only ceased once she quickened her pace, moving as if the unseen presence had followed her until she departed. Occasionally, visitors report seeing more than one shadow, moving in ways that suggest intelligence. Some describe figures darting from tree to tree, disappearing and reappearing as if playing a silent game of pursuit. The feeling of being watched intensifies in these encounters, a sense that the spirit is aware of every movement, every thought, yet remains just beyond reach. One night, a group of teenagers exploring the trail with flashlights saw a form at the far end, partially illuminated. When they approached, it vanished, leaving only the sound of soft, mournful breathing. Paranormal investigators have visited Lincoln Park Trail over the years, attempting to capture evidence of the unknown. Audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers, calling names, or repeating short phrases, though playback often leaves them almost incomprehensible. Despite these eerie reports, Lincoln Park Trail continues to attract visitors. Daytime hikers enjoy the winding paths, ocean views, and natural beauty, unaware of the stories that come alive after dark. Shadows stretch and shift, whispers travel on the wind, and a presence lingers that cannot be ignored. Those who walk the trail after dusk often feel a pull, an invisible attention guiding them along the path, reminding them that some mysteries refuse to fade, and some spirits are never truly gone. You've walked under moonlit trees, across foggy lakeshores, and along deserted trails. You've glimpsed shadows that move when no one is near and felt whispers carried by the wind. Washington's parks are more than places to hike and relax. They are homes to restless spirits, ancient grief, and stories that refuse to fade. Next time you wander a trail at night, remember, some shadows never leave. Until next time, my night wanderers, keep your flashlight close, your steps careful, and your courage steady. Good night.